Chapter 96. In the dreamscape, Qin Wenyin had completely sunk into that unique state. He had forgotten how much time had passed, and he didn't even know what he was doing. Even when Qin Yao called out to him from the outside world, he didn't even notice her. Hence, Qin Yao didn't continue to disturb his dreamscape. If there were experts who were proficient in the mandate of dreams here, they would definitely know that Qin Wenyan's current state was that he had entered into a deep dreamscape. In this state, it was equivalent to entering a deeper level of comprehension and cultivation. His comprehension ability was at its peak. 2 days later, in front of the dreamscape beach, Qin Wenyan's fingers finally stopped. He stared at the diagram he had inscribed as he awoke from that special state of mind. Success. Qin Wenyan's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. The diagram he inscribed was a human-shaped diagram. That person wielded an ancient halberd, thrusting forward. Such a simple movement, yet it gave off a feeling of boundless strength. That kind of aura, an indomitable will, capable of destroying everything in its path. This diagram seemed to have a mind of its own. As long as one stared at it, they would discover that it was like a living diagram, able to bring them into a miraculous state. Can this be considered a brand new type of divine imprint? Qin Wenyan murmured. Human-shaped divine imprint. If it could be considered a new type of divine imprint, what grade would it belong to? Qin Wenyan inclined his head and stared at the empty space. He didn't know how much time had passed, and with an intention of his will, Qin Wenyan exited the dreamscape. This was a dream he created himself. He could control his will to enter and exit the dreamscape. In the outside world, Qin Wenyan opened his eyes, returning to reality. He discovered Qin Yao pacing back and forth at a distance away. He couldn't help but smile as he greeted, "Sister?" Upon seeing that Qin Wenyan had awoken, Qin Yao couldn't help but smile as she walked to his side. "You've been cultivating for a really long time. Did you wait for a long time?" Qin Wenyan asked. "I came here occasionally because I wanted to tell you something. I've received a letter from the Snow Cloud country." Qin Yao's countenance turned solemn as she continued. In the letter, they said that at the end of the year, they would come to chew together with the crown prince of the Snow Cloud country. "Why did they do that?" Qin Wenyan frowned. "Not sure." Qin Yao shook her head. But soon after, an extremely important piece of news circulated around the royal capital of Chu. For the June Lin banquet at the end of this year, the crown prince of Snow Cloud will be bringing people along with him. Seems like the June Lin banquet this year will be extremely lively, Qin Wenyan said in a low voice. Then he smiled at Qin Yao and said, "Sister, don't worry too much. Everything will be clear at the end of the year. It's good that you know about this. Don't feel too much pressure and cultivate hard. I'm useless myself, so I can only place my hopes on you." Qin Yao said apologetically. She knew that with her strength, she would never be able to save her father and grandfather. This burden could only fall onto Qin Wenyan's shoulders. "Don't worry, sister, there will definitely be a day when I stand high up in the sky, looking down on the entire Chu country." Qin Wenyan gently caressed Qin Yao's face as he consoled her with a smile. Qin Yao smiled as she nodded her head. "I'll go prepare something for you to eat." "Good, I can taste sister's cooking again." Qin Wenyan laughed as Qin Yao walked towards the room at the side. Qin Wenyan had chosen an independent manner, so naturally, he would bring Qin Yao to stay together with him. After Qin Yao left, Qin Wenyan found a few pieces of paper and started to inscribe the picture on the paper. However, in the real world, Qin Wenyan wanted to inscribe the picture in the dreamscape, but to his surprise, he failed again and again. Evidently, in the dreamscape, he had hypnotized himself, pushing himself to his limits. However, as Qin Wenyan gradually calmed his heart, he repeated this process several times, and when Qin Yao was done preparing the dishes, the picture was finally completed. After all, he had already achieved this in the dreamscape. In the real world, he only needed time to adapt to it. What an exquisite picture, it's as though it's alive. Qin Yao stood in front of Qin Wenyan, her beautiful eyes glimmering with a strange light. "Wenyan, why do I feel a tyrannical aura gushing towards me? That silhouette seems to be asleep and awake at the same time, and when its eyes open and close, it's as though a divine light would shoot out from them, as though it wanted to use the ancient halberd in its hands to tear apart the heavens and earth. The more Qin Yao looked at the picture, the more curious she felt. Her consciousness felt as though it was about to be sucked into the picture. She felt as though she was standing on the surface of the sea, facing this incomparably tyrannical silhouette, and could be destroyed at any moment. This is the first runic pattern I've inscribed. I wonder if it can be considered a divine imprint. Qin Wendian laughed. Divine imprints are incomparably wondrous. Even the most ordinary of first-level divine imprints are so vivid and lifelike, as though they contain a life of their own. This picture that I inscribed in this strange state, if it really has the same effect as a divine imprint, its grade shouldn't be too low. What a monster! Qin Yao didn't know how to describe Qin Wenyan. Just a single glance at the picture made her feel that it was incomparably profound. Qin Wenyan had actually comprehended it on his own. Such a level of comprehension was something she couldn't hope to match. Naturally, she was happy for Qin Wenyan. This was her younger brother, the person closest to her. Okay, let's go eat. Qin Yao pulled Qin Wenyan along as they left. Qin Wentian's eyes lit up as he enjoyed a sumptuous meal with Qin Yao. After enjoying a heartwarming lunch, Qin Wenyan entered the City of Illusions through the Dream Sky Forest. Life in the academy was peaceful and free, but one couldn't forget to raise one's strength. In the City of Illusions, Qin Wenyan appeared in an empty space. He rubbed the interspatial ring on his finger, and with a slight intention of his will, an ancient halberd appeared in his hands. Indeed, this dreamscape is so realistic. As long as I bring something into the dreamscape, it can be used in the dreamscape. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered, transforming into a series of afterimages as he moved at an extremely fast speed. Many people in the surroundings avoided Qin Wentian when they saw him. Currently, Qin Wentian's fame was getting greater and greater. He was someone who could easily defeat Yanaro and exchange blows with Luo Qianqiu. If one didn't have a cultivation base at the 8th level of arterial circulation, no one would dare to antagonize him. This was especially so for Qin Wentian, who wielded an ancient halberd. Very quickly, Qin Wentian spotted a member of the Knights Association. This person wielded a long spear, and his eyes gleamed with sharpness. A raging wind gusted by. Qin Wentian's silhouette was akin to a gigantic bird, as he dashed towards his opponent with lightning speed. That person knew that there was no way to retreat. Similarly, he brandished his long spear and dashed towards Qin Wenyan. White Tiger Stance. Executing the berserk beast halberd art, Qin Wenyan stabbed out with his ancient halberd, resembling the roar of a ferocious tiger. His halberd collided with his opponent's long spear, instantly causing it to be flung away. Puchi! The tip of the halberd, as well as the crescent moon blades, pierced into his opponent's body. That pain was akin to torture. That person stared fixedly at Qin Wenyan before his silhouette vanished from sight. After killing his opponent, Qin Wenyan immediately sped away. Not long after, he encountered the second member of the Knights Association. A gust of wind gusted by as the ancient halberd swept out horizontally. The crescent moon blades were as sharp as the wings of a vermilion bird, radiating a cold golden light as they directly sliced through the throat of that person. Fresh blood splattered as the silhouette of that person also vanished from sight. Time and time again, as long as they encountered members of the Knights Association, they would definitely die under the ancient halberd. Qin Wenyan had become the nightmare of the Knights Association. Many in the City of Illusions had personally witnessed Qin Wenyan slaughtering the members of the Knights Association. This news circulated around the Emperor Star Academy, causing many to sigh. Evidently, Qin Wenyan hadn't forgotten the humiliation he had suffered at the hands of Qin Wenyan. The conflict between the Knights Association and Qin Wenyan would only grow more and more intense. As for Orkan, it was said that after he broke through to the 9th level of arterial circulation, he went out to temper himself. Everyone was clear that Orkan was preparing for the June Lin banquet a month later. The moment he returned, he would definitely not spare Qin Wenyan. However, Qin Wenyan also encountered a tough opponent in the City of Illusions. His opponent was clad in blue robes, and his cultivation base was at the peak of the 8th level of arterial circulation. His combat prowess was extremely terrifying. Qin Wenin was naturally extremely excited as he frenziedly unleashed his berserk beast halberd technique, comprehending new insights in the midst of battle. The 4 stances and 36 transformations of the berserk beast halberd technique was a complete set of halberd techniques. The more one mastered it, the greater the power they could unleash. In Qin Wentian's dreams, he imagined himself using his strongest halberd technique, and a true azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise would appear in a single strike. Qi. At this moment, Qin Wentian only felt that the palm strike of his opponent was illusory. His ancient halberd danced in the air, transforming into a xuanwu, protecting him. However, when the palm strike of his opponent landed on the xuanwu, it trembled 9 times, causing cracks to appear on his defense. Qin Wentian's silhouette floated backwards as he laughed, "Let's fight again another day." After speaking, he turned and left, arriving at a separate space by himself. After which, he began to practice his halberd techniques. The reason why he didn't continue fighting earlier was because he had comprehended something. The ancient halberd slashed out again and again, tyrannical beyond compare. However, Qin Wentian still felt that something was amiss. There was no aura of the divine imprint, nor was there the resolution of that halberd strike. Qin Wentian. At this moment, a pleasantly surprised voice drifted over. Qin Wentian halted his training, and after which he saw the silhouette of Mu Rou. What a coincidence! Qin Wentian smiled. After I heard that you returned to the Emperor Star Academy, I would come here to see if I could meet you again. Mu Rou glared at Qin Wentian. Only now did Qin Wentian realize that this was the place where he and Mu Rou would frequently spar. Seems like he was too engrossed in it. Awkwardly smiling, Qin Wentian asked, "Is there something you need from me? Can't I look for you if there's nothing?" Mu Rou had a bitter expression on her face, causing Qin Wentian to smile bitterly. Mu Rou then replied with a smile, "I'm just teasing you. Tomorrow is my 18th birthday. Can you come here to give me your blessings, and at the same time, spar with me to temper my movement techniques? I can do it now." Qin Wentian laughed, as he kept his ancient halberd. "Come and attack me." "Okay." Mu Rou laughed, as she launched an attack towards Qin Wentian. Mu Rou discovered that her attacks were already unable to touch Qin Wentian. Not only that, every time she tried to dodge, his movements would be exquisite to the extreme. It was as though with just a thought, his entire body would dance along with his movements, extremely exquisite. However, this kind of tempering was extremely beneficial to her own innate techniques. She slowly comprehended it, and only when she was drenched in sweat did she stop. Together with Qin Wentian, she left the City of Illusions. After Qin Wentian exited the City of Illusions, he returned to his courtyard, as though he was deep in thought. Glancing at the painting in the pavilion, Qin Wentian's eyes brightened. Mu Rou had treated him very well, and since it was her 18th birthday, he should give her a present to congratulate her. Chapter 97. Today was Mu Rou's 18th birthday. She was in the prime of her youth, yet she felt exceptionally lonely and cold. Because this year, her clan didn't summon her back to prepare a banquet for her. Many of her old friends also didn't come to congratulate her. Shui Yuanke. Mu Rou was currently in an elegant courtyard. This was the place she shared with 2 other girls. Upon seeing the 2 girls, Mu Rou called out, "Mu Rou, what's the matter?" The 2 girls turned and asked Mu Rou, "Today is my birthday, let's have a meal together." Mu Rou said to Shui Yuan and Ke, "No need, I have some matters to attend to today. You should spend your time by yourself." Shui Yuan smiled. "I have matters to attend to as well, I won't be accompanying you." Ku replied as well. She didn't even bid farewell and directly walked out of the courtyard. Seeing this scene, Mu Rou sighed in her heart. Although the 2 of them were smiling, it was merely a smile on the surface. It was obvious that the other party didn't want to have too much contact with her. Mu Rou had long sensed this. But even so, she still felt a little disappointed. Chu Ling also lived here in the past, and the relationship between the 4 of them wasn't bad. Especially between her and Chu Ling, Shui Yuan and Ko liked to go along with them, while Chu Ling was cold and indifferent. Mu Rou didn't mind so much, and was very close to Shui Yuan and Ko. Mu Rou also stood up and left, heading towards the Dream Sky Forest, arriving at a familiar location in the City of Illusions. However, she didn't see Qin Wendian for too long, so she left. If it was in the past, she would have waited a little longer. But today, she was absent-minded, and didn't seem to be in the mood to do so. At this moment, Shui Yuan and Ko returned to their residence. When they left, they received a picture scroll sent over by the Sky Transport Network. The Sky Transport Network was one of the 3 largest networks in the Chu country. At the same time, it was also the largest transportation network in the Chu country. They reared many demonic beasts, and as long as one was willing to pay the price, they would be able to send items across countries in a short period of time. After all, many of the youths from the various academies were far away from their hometowns, and would often need to send letters back home. This painting was sent from the Emperor Star Academy to Mu Rou, but because Mu Rou wasn't at home, the Sky Transport Network passed it to Shui Yuan for her to deliver. Shui Yuan and Ko were somewhat curious, but they didn't pay too much attention to it. They brought the painting with them as they went to listen to an elder's lecture. Although they weren't as close to Mu Rou as they were in the past, they still agreed to help deliver the painting to Mu Rou. They wouldn't lose anything that was given to Mu Rou by the Sky Transport Network. The Sky Transport Network was one of the 3 largest companies in the Chu country. In order to send the items to all the countries, this in itself required a terrifying information network that was familiar with every place and every person. Shui Yuan, what is this? Asked Chu Ling curiously when she saw the scroll in Shui Yuan's hand. Oh, this was sent over by the Sky Transport Network for Mu Rou. It seems that it was sent from the Emperor Star Academy, but the sender didn't leave their name behind. Shui Yuan replied. Emperor Star Academy? Open it and take a look. Chu Ling spoke to Shui Yuan, causing Shui Yuan to hesitate. This didn't seem too good, but upon seeing Chu Ling's frown, she still opened the painting. Momentarily, a marvelous painting appeared before their eyes. Their bodies involuntarily retreated a step, and even the painting fell to the ground. Earlier, at the instant the painting was opened, they felt a tyrannical aura, as though the painting was about to imprint itself into their souls. What's going on? The people at the side all came over, staring at the miraculous painting on the ground. They could all sense the aura emanating from it. It was as though this painting wasn't dead, but a true expert wielding an ancient halberd, wanting to destroy everything in its path. What a marvelous painting! It must be extremely valuable. If it's someone who loves to paint, they would definitely collect it. The surrounding people all exclaimed in admiration, while Chu Ling snorted, it's just a painting. Chu Ling was thinking in her heart, who was it that actually sent such a painting to Mu Rou? What are you guys doing? At this moment, a middle-aged man walked over. He was none other than the teacher for today's lecture. Upon seeing the crowd gathered together, he couldn't help but walk over. Momentarily, the crowd parted to form a path. The gaze of the teacher landed on the ground, and he also saw the painting. Whose painting is this? The elder from the Royal Academy asked. Shui Yuan's. Someone pointed to Shui Yuan. Can you lend it to me for a while? The elder asked Shui Yuan, causing an expression of difficulty to appear on Shui Yuan's face. This painting was given to Mu Rou by the Sky Transport Network, and the instant she agreed to pass it to the Royal Academy, she would have to take responsibility for it. The Sky Transport Network had sought their opinion, and they had voluntarily agreed to pass it to the Royal Academy. Shui Yuan, in the future, if you encounter any difficulties in your cultivation, you can look for me. The elder spoke again, causing Shui Yuan's countenance to stiffen. There was no harm in lending it to him. As an elder of the Royal Academy, it was impossible for him to lose the painting. Shui Yuan nodded her head. The elder smiled as he kept the painting. Today's lecture is temporarily cancelled. Everyone, please disperse for now. After speaking, he took the painting and hurriedly left, causing the other students to click their tongues in wonder. They surrounded Shui Yuan, asking her what that painting was, and why the elder of the Royal Academy valued it so highly. With regards to this news, Mu Rou didn't know about it. Even Qin Wenyin himself didn't realize the value of the painting. After Mu Rou returned to her residence, she discovered that Shui Yuan seemed to be more polite to her than before. Not only that, there was a flicker in her eyes, causing her to feel extremely strange. However, she didn't pay too much attention to it and spent the rest of the day in disappointment. Her 18th birthday was probably the loneliest birthday she had ever had as far as she could remember. Maybe it was because of the pressure from her clan, but her father, who had always doted on her, didn't invite her back. Those major characters were too sensitive to matters related to politics. How could they care about her feelings? The date of the June Lin banquet gradually approached. The 9 mystical palace might stand behind the scenes, Luo Qianxiu might be able to contend for the top ranker position, and the crown prince of Snowcloud would also come. Chu Tianjiao's authority would only grow more and more stable. At this moment, the friends of Qin Wenyin would naturally be disliked. That day, the youth standing amidst the snowstorm had rejected the third prince, Chu Tianjiao's request to be friends. Today, the students of the Royal Academy didn't know that in the Royal Academy, there were many teachers who were in a state of shock because of a painting sent over from the Emperor's Star Academy. Naturally, they didn't know that the painting originated from the Emperor's Star Academy. According to the elder who received the painting belonged to Shui Yuan, a student of the Royal Academy. Since they already knew the origins of the painting, they naturally wouldn't investigate further. Today, the Royal Academy decided to display the painting in the Royal Academy. Not only that, they would invite people from all over to view it, especially those from the weaponsmithing world. This news quickly spread throughout the royal capital of Chu, and on the second day, it had already spread throughout the Royal Academy. A painting belonging to a student of the Royal Academy, Shui Yuan, was a priceless treasure. The Royal Academy actually invited people from all over to view it, causing a huge commotion. However, Shui Yuan felt extremely uneasy in her heart. That painting didn't belong to her, and if this matter was exposed, she would definitely lose all face and prestige. Shui Yuan thought that now, she could only try to build up a good relationship with Mu Rou. After they became more familiar with each other, she would return the painting to Mu Rou before telling her the truth. Mu Rou was baffled. She didn't know why Shui Yuan was so cordial towards her today, and even invited her to view the mystical painting that was on display in the academy. However, she was also very curious about this matter, so she followed Shui Yuan to the exhibition hall. The exhibition hall of the Royal Academy was extremely spacious and grand. In the center of the first level, a painting was displayed. Many people stopped to view it, but they had to maintain a certain distance from it. Near the painting, there were also old men of virtue and prestige. Although they looked old, there was a unique charm in their eyes, as though they were filled with vigor. This painting should be a divine imprint. Such a humanoid divine imprint, it's definitely a revolutionary creation. I wonder which Grandmaster created this. An old man commented, having an extremely high evaluation of this painting. If this painting is classified as a divine imprint, this should be an initial grade 3rd level divine imprint. However, the aura it exudes is extremely extraordinary, and I dare to say that this divine imprint has never appeared in the Chu country before. Another person commented, causing the crowd to be stunned. This painting was actually a divine imprint. A revolutionary creation, priceless. More and more people commented, and some of them even asked the elders of the Royal Academy, "Is this painting for sale?" You have to ask the person in question. That elder was none other than Shui Yuan's teacher. His gaze landed on Shui Yuan as he smiled. "Shui Yuan, are you willing to sell this painting?" Shui Yuan's countenance froze, as she glanced at Mu Rou who was beside her. "If we were to sell it, the value of the divine inscription painting would be unimaginable to you," Qin Wenyin said. That elder continued, "Also, how did you obtain this painting? Which Grandmaster created it?" Mu Rou also cast a glance at Shui Yuan, feeling somewhat taken aback. Shui Yuan actually possessed such a valuable painting, causing an uproar. The Grandmasters from the Star River Association have arrived. At this moment, a voice drifted over, as a few silhouettes walked over. Evidently, they were also here for the painting. Chapter 98. This time around, there were 4 people from the Star River Association. The one in the lead appeared to be around 50 years of age, and the instant he entered, his gaze landed on the painting. The person on his left was none other than Murin, and behind him was Gretchen from the Royal Academy. She knew that the vice president would be coming today, so she specially came to lead the way. President Swa. The elders of the Royal Academy, as well as the people around the painting, all clasped their hands in greeting. Evidently, this person was an important character. The vice president of the Star River Association, Zwain, was in charge of the weaponsmithing department. His authority was extremely great, and he himself was also a third-ranked weaponsmith. Zwain nodded his head to the crowd, before turning his gaze to Shui Yuan. "Little miss, how about selling this painting to me? I can use a third-ranked divine weapon to exchange for it." Shui Yuan's heart pounded. She wanted to say yes, but this wasn't hers. She couldn't afford the price of pocketing the treasures of the Sky Transport Network. No need. Shui Yuan's heart was pounding. "Little miss, you can tell me what you want. Such opportunities are hard to come by." Zwain continued. Shui Yuan didn't even dare to look him in the eye. "Zwain, it doesn't seem good to force a little lass like this." At this moment, a voice drifted over. Zwain's eyes narrowed as he gazed at the silhouette walking over. The person who came was dressed simply and was an extremely ordinary old man. If he was placed in a crowd, no one would pay him a second glance. However, the moment he appeared, Zwain's heart involuntarily trembled. With this old man here, it wouldn't be easy to obtain the painting. Seems like I have to keep a low profile. Zwain silently mused. After which, he whispered into Murin's ears, "Obtain this painting. Also, think of a way to find the owner of this painting. If he's in Chu, you have to invite him to the Star River Association." Murin nodded her head. If that lass refused to speak, they would have to mobilize the intelligence network of the Star River Association in the next few days. The commotion caused by this matter grew larger and larger. Shui Yuan's heart was filled with panic, and she struggled internally. She was prepared to retrieve the painting tomorrow, and then return it to Mu Rou. The news had even spread to the various martial academies, causing a commotion in the Emperor Star Academy. Now, the royal school was even temporarily open to the public, allowing people to come and admire the paintings. Today, Mu Rou's mood had calmed down quite a bit. She had once again returned to the Dream Sky Forest. Ever since she had been alienated by the others, she preferred to train in the City of Illusions, constantly becoming stronger. As usual, Mu Rou headed to a familiar place. To her surprise, she ran into Qin Wenin. She could not help but smile and ask, "Why are you here?" "Yesterday, you asked me to come here to wish you well. I arrived a little late and didn't see you, so I came here today to try my luck." Qin Wenin shrugged his shoulders, causing an expression of guilt to appear on Mu Rou's face as she replied, "You really came here to wait for me? Yesterday, I only stayed here for a while before leaving. I'm sorry." "So that's how it is. I thought you encountered something unpleasant." Qin Wenin revealed a smile. He had already regarded Mu Rou as his friend, so he would naturally take her feelings into consideration. "You're thinking too much." Mu Rou gently continued, "Oh yes, Qin Wenin, you are a genius that can inscribe third-level divine inscriptions. Currently, our Royal Academy is exhibiting a painting that, according to the evaluation of the Grandmaster Inscriptionists, is a third-level divine inscription painting. Do you want to come to the Royal Academy to take a look?" Divine inscription painting? Qin Wenin had always been focused on his cultivation. Although the Emperor Star Academy had some news about it, he had never heard of it before. "Yes, it's a painting in the form of a human, wielding an ancient halberd. It's very similar to your divine weapon," Mu Rou said as she recalled the ancient halberd in Qin Wentian's hands. Qin Wenin furrowed his brows upon hearing this. A painting in the form of a human, wielding an ancient halberd? Wasn't this the present he had prepared for Mu Rou? "Mu Rou, did you receive the present I prepared for you yesterday?" Qin Wentian casually asked. "Present?" Mu Rou froze for a moment before a look of pleasant surprise appeared on her face. Smiling, she replied, "I didn't expect that you would send me a present. I haven't received it yet. What did you get from a friend of yours, or even the Sky Transport Network? Mu Ro's words undoubtedly confirmed Qin Wentian's conjecture. It seemed like he had to find someone from the Sky Transport Network. Wait for me at the Royal Academy, I'll make a trip there now. Qin Wentian spoke as he turned and departed. Why are you in such a hurry? Mu Ro was somewhat puzzled as she called out to Qin Wentian, I'll wait for you at the entrance of the Royal Academy. After which, she also departed with a smile on her face. Thinking that there were still people who remembered her birthday, Mu Ro's heart warmed. Those who distanced themselves from her because she was down and out had made her understand the fickleness of human nature. True friends wouldn't behave in such a manner. Qin Wentian found someone from the Sky Transport Network who was stationed at the Emperor Star Academy. Upon receiving the news, the Sky Transport Network immediately started to investigate, and they were extremely cooperative with Qin Wentian. As for Qin Wentian himself, he arrived at the Royal Academy. As expected, Mu Ro was waiting for him outside the Royal Academy. So fast? Mu Ro stared in astonishment at the rapidly shrinking body of little rascal beside Qin Wentian, as her beautiful eyes flashed with a strange light. This little fellow's speed is even faster than a draconic horse. Qin Wentian laughed. Let's go take a look at the divine inscription painting you were talking about. Seems like you are indeed very interested in divine inscriptions. Mu Ro laughed as she led the way. Although the two of them didn't interact much in the real world, spending most of their time in the dreamscape, they were still very familiar with each other and treated each other as good friends. The number of people surrounding the exhibition hall grew even more. Many grandmasters from the world of weaponsmiths rushed over, and when they saw the divine inscription painting, they were all extremely shocked. This was a subversive divine inscription. Not only that, this divine inscription seemed to be able to be broken down into multiple parts, yet it was still a complete entity. Many people had the impulse to take it for themselves and study it. However, in the Royal Academy, no one dared to make a move to snatch it away. Before Qin Wentian arrived at the exhibition hall, he already met with two familiar faces, Yi Zhan and Lu Yen. Yi Zhan halted his steps, as a cold light flickered in his eyes. However, the corners of his mouth still curled up in a smile as he glanced at Mu Ro. Mu Ro, so your relationship with Qin Wentian is actually so good. If this matter were to spread to the Mu clan, it wouldn't be good. What does it have to do with you? Mu Ro coldly replied as she swept a glance at Yi Zhan. Qin Wentian glanced at Lu Yen, his countenance extremely calm. In the past, he had mistakenly treated Lu Yen as his savior. Now that the misunderstanding had been cleared up, he was very calm. He couldn't stop Yi Zhan from being together with Lu Yen, but if Yi Zhan were to land in his hands, he wouldn't be polite. Is that so? Yi Zhan coldly laughed, as though he wanted to say something, only to hear Qin Wentian continuing, You'd better shut your mouth. As the sound of his voice faded, a cold intent gushed forth from Qin Wentian as he lunged towards Yi Zhan, causing Yi Zhan's countenance to stiffen. Staring at Qin Wentian, he coldly laughed. If it wasn't for the Emperor Star Academy supporting you, would you still be alive today? If it wasn't for the Royal Academy, you would already be a dead man. Qin Wentian took a step forward, as a surge of pressure gushed forth, causing Yi Zhan's countenance to drastically change as he retreated 2 steps. Let's go. Qin Wentian spoke to Mu Ro, only to see Mu Ro coldly staring at Yi Zhan. If you weren't born in the Yi clan, would you still be so arrogant? Everything he has achieved, he had to depend on himself. What qualifications do you have to say the word, if? As she spoke, Mu Ro cast a glance at Lu Yen, who was standing at the side. Your judgment really isn't that good. After which, she followed Qin Wentian into the exhibition hall, causing Yi Zhan's countenance to turn ashen. His originally gentle countenance now had traces of malevolence in it. I really want to see how long more he can jump around. Yi Zhan coldly stated as he held onto Lu Yan's hand. He won't be able to go far. In the future, he won't be able to touch you. Lu Yan lightly nodded her head as she also entered the exhibition hall. When Qin Wentian saw the painting, a sharp glint of light flashed in his eyes. This was a gift he had prepared for Mu Ro, yet Mu Ro didn't even know about it. Not only that, this gift had been displayed in the Royal Academy without their consent. If it was anyone else, they would surely be in an extremely bad mood. However, when Qin Wenyan neared the painting, he was blocked by someone. That person stated, "Students are not allowed to go near it." Qin Wenyan snorted. Something that belonged to him, yet he wasn't allowed to go near it. "He's from the Emperor's Star Academy, Qin Wenyan." Yi Zhan's voice drifted over, and in an instant, the gazes of several people landed on Qin Wenyan. Someone coldly laughed. "Qin Wenyan from the Emperor's Star Academy? Is he here to visit our Royal Academy? I heard that he's able to inscribe third-level divine imprints, but I don't know if it's true or not. I'm afraid he's here to learn." The elders of the Royal Academy also turned their gazes towards Qin Wenyan, only to hear one of them saying, "Since he's from the Emperor's Star Academy, stand at the back." The Royal Academy had always been in direct competition with the Emperor's Star Academy, especially since the Emperor's Star Academy was known as the #1 academy in the Chu country. Under such circumstances, the Royal Academy naturally felt enmity towards the Emperor's Star Academy. Not only that, this student of the Emperor's Star Academy was none other than Qin Wenyan. Chapter 99. Qin Wenyan could naturally feel the enmity emanating from the elder. However, he had no interest in the Royal Academy. But the Royal Academy had coveted his belongings. Qin Wenyan advanced instead of retreating. He smiled. "There's no problem if you want to stand back. However, I want to bring my belongings away." "Your belongings?" That elder was none other than the teacher who had borrowed the divine inscription painting from Shui Yuan. He stared at Qin Wenyan as he unhappily asked. "Yes, it's mine." Qin Wenyan pointed to the divine inscription painting as he calmly replied. However, as the sound of his voice faded, it didn't cause the commotion he had imagined. Not only that, the crowd only froze for a moment as they cast a glance in his direction before shifting their gazes away. He said that the divine inscription painting displayed in the exhibition hall belonged to him. Wasn't this a joke? If it belonged to him, wouldn't the Royal Academy treat him as an esteemed guest when they exhibited his painting? Why would they stop him from getting close? Wasn't this an insult to the intelligence of the Royal Academy? This joke wasn't funny at all. In fact, it sounded a little cold. "Yours? Was it drawn by you?" That elder froze for a moment before asking in a mocking tone. Qin Wenyan honestly nodded his head. This painting was indeed drawn by him. Seeing that Qin Wenyan actually nodded his head, the expressions on the faces of the crowd grew more and more interesting. It was as though this painting was really drawn by him. That elder contemplated Qin Wenyan as a strange expression appeared on his face. Especially Qin Wenyan's countenance. This divine inscription painting was something he had borrowed from Shui Yuan. Shui Yuan shouldn't have any interactions with Qin Wenyan, so when did this painting belong to Qin Wenyan? And what was even more ridiculous was that Qin Wenyan said that he was the one who drew it. Are all the students of the Emperor's Star Academy as shameless as you? That elder coldly spat out. Although his voice wasn't loud, it was filled with a sense of humiliation. Although Qin Wenyan's status in the Emperor's Star Academy was extremely high, he still dared to boast in such a manner in the Royal Academy. One couldn't help but say that he was simply seeking his own humiliation. Many people had moved their eyes away from Qin Wenyan, but at this moment, they became interested again. This guy seemed to be quite humorous. "Little fellow, I've heard rumors about you from my friends. You're a young genius from the Divine Weapon Pavilion who can inscribe third-level divine inscriptions. However, do you know what this human-shaped divine inscription signifies? With regards to this type of divine imprint, even a third-ranked grandmaster would find it difficult to inscribe it, let alone creating it. It's better for the younger generation to have some respect in their hearts." At the side of the painting, a weaponsmith advised Qin Wenyan, his tone filled with the tone of someone lecturing a junior. Upon hearing the words of this person, many in the world of weaponsmiths had expressions of respect on their faces. This old man was a third-ranked grandmaster, and his status was extremely high. Behind Qin Wenyan, Mu Rou was somewhat depressed. What was wrong with this fellow, Qin Wenyan? Walking forward, she tugged at the corner of Qin Wenyan's robes as she softly said, "Let's go out for a walk." Qin Wenyan shifted his gaze, looking at Mu Rou who was beside him. In a serious tone he stated, "This painting is really mine. Not only that, it's the birthday present I gave you yesterday." Mu Rou froze. Looking at the serious expression on Qin Wentian's face, it didn't seem as though he was joking. Not only that, based on her understanding of Qin Wenyan wouldn't joke about such a matter. In that case, what Qin Wenyan said might be true. However, this painting that caused such a huge commotion in the Royal Academy, as well as the entire weaponsmithing world, was actually a birthday present given to her? Even Mu Rou, as the person in question, couldn't believe it. However, Mu Rou gradually believed in Qin Wenyan. However, when Qin Wentian's words entered into the ears of others, it became an even bigger joke. A painting that could cause such a huge commotion was actually a birthday present? Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? A birthday present? Ridiculous to the extreme. That teacher coldly snorted in disdain. Qin Wentian's words were getting more and more ridiculous. Even if you want to fabricate a reason, you should at least come up with something more convincing, right? At this moment, another voice drifted over. Qin Wenyan turned his gaze over to the person who spoke. It was someone he was familiar with, Murin from the Star River Association. For someone like you, even a single glance at you would dirty my eyes, let alone fabricating a reason. Qin Wenyan stared at Murin as he spoke. Every time he saw Murin's calm countenance that was tinged with a hint of arrogance, he couldn't help but think of the filthy soul hidden beneath her skin. If he had a choice, he wouldn't even bother to glance at Murin. Hence, he quickly shifted his gaze away from Murin. Since he didn't have the ability to make Murin pay for his actions in the past, he would do his best not to disgust himself. Upon hearing Qin Wentian's words, Murin's countenance instantly turned cold. After which, he coldly replied, "Not having the slightest bit of respect for your elders, only the Qin clan would be able to teach you. No wonder you're a traitor." Murin's words were even harsher and more venomous compared to Qin Wentian's. "After deceiving me to join the Star River Association, you betrayed me and my Qin clan to the Yi clan, coveting the divine imprints of the divine inscriptionists of the Sky Harmony City's Star River branch. It's hard to imagine that a person like you would actually hope for the respect of others. How thick is the skin on your face?" Qin Wenyan shook his head as he spoke, not even bothering to glance at Murin. Murin furrowed his brows, while expressions of interest appeared on the faces of the surrounding crowd. However, the elder from the Royal Academy spoke again. "I don't care how the Emperor Star Academy taught you, but this place is the Royal Academy. Our Royal Academy doesn't welcome a youth like you who doesn't know how to respect himself." The elder stared at Qin Wenyan as he slowly continued, "So, can you scram now?" The elder from the Royal Academy had a condescending look on his face. After being a teacher for so many years, he had never seen such an arrogant student before. Not only that, Qin Wenyan was also a student of the Emperor's Star Academy. "I do want to leave, but the problem is, your Royal Academy didn't seek my permission and instead displayed my artwork here. And now, you want to chase me away?" Qin Wenyan had a serious expression on his face, causing many to be speechless. Not only that, the students of the Royal Academy had already started to jeer, "I've never seen such a shameless person before. If I were him, I would have scrammed as far away as I could." Numerous voices rang out, none of them friendly. After all, this place was the Royal Academy. To Qin Wenyan, this place was filled with hostility. "Do you want me to chase you away?" The elder took a step in the direction of Qin Wenyan, as an intense pressure bore down on Qin Wenyan. But at this moment, a radiant smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face. The Royal Academy represents the face of the royal clan. In the royal capital of the Chu country, it is second only to the Emperor's Star Academy. I thought that in many matters, the Royal Academy would be magnanimous, but it seems like I was wrong. Qin Wenyan stared at the elder as he slowly continued, "Of course, things will soon become clear. The more you act like this, the uglier the face of the Royal Academy will be." Looking at the serious expression on Qin Wentian's face, a few people started to waver. There was no reason for Qin Wenyan to cause trouble here. Could it be that such a ridiculous matter was real? The Sky Transport Network is already investigating this matter. I believe that we will have an answer very soon. Qin Wendian continued. What nonsense! The elder coldly snorted. Since when did this have anything to do with the Sky Transport Network? At this moment, a group of silhouettes walked over. They were none other than the people from the Sky Transport Network. As they walked to the front of the crowd, they couldn't help but to silently curse the person in charge of the Royal Academy for being so muddle-headed. If the painting had been delivered to Mu Ro, such a thing wouldn't have happened. In such a situation, if they were to expose the truth, where would the face of the Royal Academy be? Elder, can I speak with you for a moment? The person in charge of the Sky Transport Network asked the elder of the Royal Academy, causing the elder to frown, as though he felt something was amiss. If you have anything to say, just say it out loud. I'm looking for the Sky Transport Network to help me transport the painting. Now that such a thing has happened, do you really intend to settle this in secret? Qin Wenyin calmly replied as he stared at the people walking over. The elder from the Emperor Star Academy coldly snorted as he spoke to the person in charge of the Sky Transport Network. What's the matter? Just say it, there's no need to hide. The person in charge of the Sky Transport Network had an awkward expression on his face. After which, he bowed to Qin Wenyin and the elder from the Royal Academy. This matter, the fault lies with my Sky Transport Network. Such a scene caused the crowd to feel that something was amiss. It was as though there was a problem with the origin of the painting. The Sky Transport Network was the first to apologize to both parties, as expected of one of the 3 largest networks in Chu. Elder, did this divine inscription painting originate from Shui Yuan of the Royal Academy? The person in charge of the Sky Transport Network inquired. Yes. The elder furrowed his brows, but he still nodded his head. If that's the case, then the owner of this painting should be Qin Wenyin of the Emperor Star Academy. The person in charge once again bowed to the elder from the Royal Academy. However, at this moment, no one was paying attention to his actions. His voice was like a clap of thunder in the quiet space, causing many people's hearts to tremble violently. Was this a joke? If that was the case, then wasn't this a little too cold? Such a plot seemed to be a little too dramatic. Where would the royal school put its face? Especially when the voice of the elder from the Royal Academy was so powerful and resonant. Chapter 100. Shui Yuan had originally left, but as she strolled around the Royal Academy, she discovered that many people were heading towards the exhibition hall. It was said that there were students from the Emperor Star Academy who dared to cause trouble, claiming that the divine inscription painting belonged to him. Such rumors caused Shui Yuan to panic, and she immediately rushed to the exhibition hall. After which, she heard the conversation between her teacher and Qin Wenyin, as well as the arrival of the people from the Sky Transport Network. At this moment, she was in the midst of the crowd, and her countenance was slightly pale. Not only her, all the students from the Royal Academy had strange expressions on their faces as they stared at the person in charge of the Sky Transport Network. However, that person could only smile bitterly. He didn't expect that such a coincidental matter would lead to such a situation. You're not joking, right? The elder from the Royal Academy had a heavy expression on his face as he stated, "This divine inscription painting belongs to Shui Yuan, a student of our Royal Academy. I borrowed it from her. How would our Sky Transport Network dare to make a mistake? This painting was indeed delivered by us from Qin Wenyin of the Emperor Star Academy. Initially, we wanted to gift it to Miss Mu Ro, but because Miss Mu Ro wasn't in her residence, the person who delivered the painting asked Shui Yuan if she could help us keep it. Shui Yuan also agreed, and only then did we dare to let her keep it for us." That person bitterly smiled, causing the expressions of the crowd to stiffen. Did that mean that what Qin Wenyin said was true? This painting was the gift he prepared for Mu Ro? Mu Ro's beautiful eyes shone with a strange light as she glanced at Qin Wenyin. This fellow actually gave her such a valuable gift. However, she was extremely happy in her heart. After all, her birthday this year was exceptionally cold. Where is Shui Yuan? That elder swept his gaze over to the crowd, only to see Shui Yuan walking out with her head lowered. Her countenance was pale as she replied, Teacher, this painting was indeed kept by me. I originally planned to return it to Mu Rou today. Seeing Shui Yuan admitting it, the last traces of doubt in the hearts of the crowd was completely dispelled. This divine inscription painting was actually in Qin Wentian's possession. The entire exhibition hall sank into a momentary silence. Mu Rou cast a glance at Shui Yuan, as a look of disappointment appeared on her face. No wonder Shui Yuan's attitude towards her suddenly changed. Who would have thought that Shui Yuan would be so shameless as to take the divine inscription painting that Qin Wenyin had given her? You said that this divine inscription painting was inscribed by you. In that case, why don't you inscribe a painting right now to prove that what you said is true? After a moment of silence, the elder from the Royal Academy spoke again, as though he couldn't bring himself to lose face. Qin Wenyin raised his eyebrows and looked at him with a strange expression. The Sky Transport Network came out to testify, and Shui Yuan admitted it herself. Yet you still refuse to admit it. This is the first time I've met such a person. Qin Wenyin sneered. Why should I carve a painting for you to see? Do we know each other that well? Hearing Qin Wentian's words, the other party was speechless and unable to refute. Those who were mocking Qin Wenyin, at this moment, all shut their mouths. Earlier, the Royal Academy had humiliated Qin Wenyin, but now, how resounding was the slap to his face. May I ask the elder from the Royal Academy if I can retrieve my item now? Qin Wenyin indifferently asked as he walked towards the painting. Earlier, he was obstructed even when he approached the painting. Not only that, the other party even told him to stand at the back. And now, this painting was actually Qin Wentian's. Qin Wenyin walked towards the divine inscription painting and rolled it up. However, at this moment, a weaponsmith beside him laughed. Little brother, was this painting really inscribed by you? I don't know, Qin Wenyin laughed. He also realized that he had underestimated the value of this painting. Since the other party was suspicious, he couldn't be bothered to say anything more. Grandmaster Qin, my name is Yan Yi. If there's an opportunity, we can have an exchange. Ha, Brother Qin, I'm a guest elder from the Divine Weapon Pavilion, Lu Feng. I've long heard of your name, I definitely have to get to know you. At this moment, several people walked up as they politely greeted Qin Wenyin. I don't dare to call myself Grandmaster, you can just call me Wenyin. It's my fortune to be able to have an exchange with Senior. Qin Wenyin smiled as he replied to the greetings of the people in the surroundings, appearing extremely humble. These people all had extraordinary statuses, and being able to get to know some of them naturally wouldn't be a bad thing. In the past, I didn't believe the rumors. How could a young man like him be able to inscribe a third-level divine inscription? But now that I've personally witnessed this painting, I finally understand that there's always someone stronger out there. I've truly grown old. An old man sighed as he continued, talent is truly a wondrous thing. I'm afraid this old man will never be able to inscribe a painting like this in my entire life. Indeed. In the future, don't be too proud of yourself. Wenyin, did you create this painting yourself? Someone asked. At this moment, Qin Wenyin was already surrounded by people, and he couldn't help but to smile bitterly in his heart. However, this scene caused those from the Royal Academy to feel even more embarrassed. Was this really the Royal Academy? How did it become Qin Wentian's home? Not only that, a group of seniors were all seeking his guidance and befriending him. The popularity of a powerful weaponsmith is truly terrifying. Many people silently speculated. In the Chu country, there was a saying, you can offend anyone, but you must never offend a powerful weaponsmith. It was rumored that in the royal capital of the Chu country, there was once a leader of a sect who humiliated a weaponsmith who was extremely strong in the art of weaponsmithing. Not long after, the leader of the sect was surrounded by a group of Yuanfu realm cultivators, and in a single night, his sect was annihilated. Even the leader of the sect was surrounded and killed, causing the entire Chu country to tremble. Due to a stroke of good fortune, I was able to comprehend something in my heart and inscribe it. My luck is pretty good. Qin Wenyin replied with a smile. The countenances of the crowd didn't change, but they were even more shocked in their hearts. At this moment, they no longer doubted Qin Wentian's words. In the Chu country, it was true that no one had ever inscribed such a divine inscription before. Who would have thought that today, a young genius would be able to create such a miracle? Little brat, can you sell this divine inscription painting to me? At this moment, a voice abruptly drifted over. The crowd turned their gazes over, only to see that the person who spoke was an extremely ordinary-looking old man. However, those who knew him all had expressions of surprise on their faces. This old man was actually interested in this divine inscription painting. Yes, if you are willing to sell it, my Star River Association is willing to pay the price. Murin also spoke at this moment, causing Qin Wendian to glance at him. Murin didn't expect that this divine inscription painting was really inscribed by Qin Wendian. Thinking back to the time when he wanted to become Qin Wentian's disciple but was rejected by Qin Wendian, he couldn't help but feel hatred in his heart. That little brat from back then had actually grown so fast that it exceeded his expectations. If this continued, Qin Wendian would truly be a threat to him. As for this painting, Vice President Wa'in had instructed him to obtain it no matter what. But what made him depressed was that this painting belonged to Qin Wendian. Hence, he could only brace himself and speak. You want it? Qin Wendian glanced at Murin. Murin nodded his head. As long as you say it, you can state any price you want. He believed that even if he had a grudge with Qin Wendian, it wouldn't hinder him from exchanging benefits. I want one of your arms. Are you willing to give it to me? Qin Wendian calmly asked Murin, causing Murin's countenance to instantly turn cold. Qin Wendian didn't look at him anymore. This arrogant Grandmaster Murin, sooner or later, he would make him pay for his actions in the past. That day wouldn't be too far away. Currently, in the world of weaponsmiths, he believed that he had already surpassed Murin. Qin Wendian stared at the person beside Murin as he continued, Once, I sincerely wanted to become a guest elder of the Star River Association. However, this sincere heart of mine was coldly betrayed by Murin. Naturally, I believe that this has nothing to do with the Star River Association. Qin Wendian didn't continue speaking, but just this sentence alone caused Murin's heart to tighten. How ruthless Qin Wendian was. This sentence was extremely thought-provoking, and there were many interpretations behind it. For example, if he settled the matter regarding Murin, he could still become friends with the Star River Association. If the Star River Association really had the intention to recruit Qin Wendian, then not only would Murin not be able to use the Star River Association to deal with Qin Wendian, he would also have to be on guard against the Star River Association abandoning him because of Qin Wendian. After speaking, Murin glanced at the ordinary-looking old man as he smiled. I've made Senior wait for a long time. However, I've already given this painting to my friend Mu Ro. If I didn't guess wrongly, this painting should have been created when you were in a special state of mind. Even if you wanted to create another one, it wouldn't be easy. Not only that, the value of the first painting would definitely be the highest. Are you really willing to give it away? The old man's lips curled into a smile that was not a smile as he stared at Qin Wendian. Gifts to friends, how can they be valued? It's just a token of my sincerity. In addition, if it wasn't for some shameless people, this painting would have already landed in the hands of my friend. Don't tell me Senior wants me to take it back? Qin Wendian laughed. Naturally, if my friend is willing to sell it to Senior, I won't have any objections. After speaking, Qin Wendian turned and passed the painting over to Mu Ro. He smiled. Although there were some mistakes, I should be able to make up for my mistake by personally giving this to you. Mu Ro lowered her head slightly, and when she raised her head, her eyes were slightly red. This painting had caused such a huge commotion, and Mu Ro was naturally clear of its value. Under such circumstances, Qin Wendian, who had only met her a few times, still chose to give it to her as a birthday gift. Yet her own clan was actually so cold towards her. How could Mu Ro not feel touched? Thank you. Mu Ro didn't reject. She smiled radiantly as she received the painting from Qin Wentian's hands. This friendship was heavy, yet it caused one to feel warmth in their hearts. What are you thanking me for? Back then, under such circumstances, you still recognized me as your friend. Qin Wendian laughed. What he was referring to was naturally that day at the banquet, when everyone was hostile towards Qin Wendian. Despite the immense pressure, Mu Rou still told everyone that Qin Wenyin was her friend. At that time, Qin Wenyin told himself that he would definitely repay what he owed today in the future. Chapter 101. The crowd in the exhibition hall personally witnessed Qin Wenyin gifting the painting to Mu Rou, as they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. This fellow was truly willing to part with the painting, causing many to feel jealous of Mu Rou. Naturally, such a scene also proved Qin Wentian's words. This divine inscription painting was indeed inscribed by him. If not, why would he gift it to someone else? The Mu residence has given birth to a good lass. An elder smiled and nodded to Mu Rou. Upon seeing this elder, Mu Rou couldn't help but be startled. This elder had an extraordinary status in the royal capital. Not only him, there were many people here today who all had extraordinary statuses. There were even quite a few third-ranked grandmasters among them. A lass from the Mu residence, not bad. Another person laughed. Mu Rou bowed to those who spoke, showing her respect. Momentarily, Mu Rou became the focal point of the crowd. Such a scene caused Mu Rou to feel even more moved in her heart. "Lass Mu, sell this painting to me." That ordinary-looking elder spoke again. His voice wasn't loud, but as the sound of his voice faded, there seemed to be a mysterious energy that suppressed all the noises in the great hall. Mu Rou glanced at that elder. She could tell from the attitude of the surrounding weaponsmiths towards this elder that this person was definitely not an ordinary person. She couldn't help but cast a glance at Qin Wenyin. "Lass, you should understand the logic of treasuring a jade ring a crime. Even as an elder of the Royal Academy, I'm afraid that even you, an elder of the Royal Academy, would covet this painting, let alone others. If this painting were to be placed in your possession, it would only bring you undeserved calamity." That elder continued. Although his words weren't very pleasing to the ears, there was indeed some logic behind it. The countenance of the elder of the Royal Academy changed, becoming somewhat unsightly. Today he had truly lost all his face. Mu Rou fell silent. This was a birthday gift from Qin Wenyin. From the standpoint of a friend, it wasn't good for her to use this gift to exchange for wealth. However, just like what the elder had said, even if she wanted to keep this gift, would she be able to keep it? Not to mention these outsiders, even her clan would probably order her to hand it over. If that was the case, how could she not comply? When Qin Wenyin saw Mu Rou looking at him, he gave her a slight nod. Qin Wenyin had already experienced the viciousness of the human heart. If this painting had not been exposed, perhaps it would not have been a big deal. However, since it had caused such a huge commotion, it was indeed a disaster and not a blessing for Mu Rou to keep this gift. Mu Rou understood Qin Wentian's gaze. She said, "This gift is of great significance to me. What does Senior intend to use to exchange for it?" The old man stared at Mu Rou. Seeing that Mu Rou had relented, he pondered for a moment before saying, "In exchange for a promise from me, you can ask me to do something for you in the future." If it was someone else who said this, the crowd would probably laugh out loud. However, after the old man finished speaking, the entire place became exceptionally quiet. Especially those who knew the old man's identity, they were even more shocked. Sometimes, a promise was worth more than any amount of wealth. This was especially true for a promise from this old man. At this moment, no one dared to fight with the old man. Mu Rou's eyes narrowed. Just as she was hesitating, a voice rang out, "Mu Rou, agree to him." The owner of this voice walked to Mu Rou's side. Upon seeing him, Mu Rou's expression turned into one of shock. "Father." Mu Rou's father nodded. "Agree to him." "Okay." Seeing the solemn expression on her father's face, Mu Rou turned to the old man and said, "Senior, I agree." The old man lightly nodded his head before saying to her, "Your clan members should know how to find me." Mu Rou stepped forward and handed the painting over to the old man. After receiving the painting, the old man glanced at Qin Wenyin as a hint of a smile appeared in his eyes. "The younger generation will surpass us in time. Little fellow, work hard and your future will be boundless. If you have the time, you can come and chat with this old man often." The old man nodded his head at Qin Wenyin before he left. However, The words he said before he left caused great waves to surge in the hearts of many. The first half of the sentence indicated that he was optimistic about Qin Wentian's future, while the second half indicated that Qin Wentian could look for him at any time. The crowd was extremely clear on what this meant. One must know that there were some third-ranked weaponsmiths among them, but even if they went to the old man's doorstep and requested to see him, they might not even be able to see him. But before the old man left, he told Qin Wentian that if he had the time, Qin Wentian could look for him and chat with him. Other than shock, many people also felt that it was a pity. That topsy-turvy divine inscription painting, they would never have the chance to see it again in the future. Unless Qin Wentian was able to create another painting that was similar to this one. Mu Rou, you have suffered a lot during these few days. Come back to the clan with me, Mu Rou's father spoke to Mu Rou. Glancing at her father, Mu Rou seemed to be somewhat unwilling. Don't worry, we will compensate you for all the resources the clan has deprived you of. Mu Rou's father laughed, causing Mu Rou's expression to stiffen. Was this all because of a promise from the old man? Or more accurately, was it because of Qin Wentian? Okay. Mu Rou glanced at Qin Wentian. I will return first. Qin Wentian nodded his head with a smile. Mu Rou's father also smiled and nodded to Qin Wentian, before bringing Mu Rou away from the place. Since the matter here was concluded, Qin Wentian also prepared to leave. There were many people here who didn't welcome him. However, before he left, Qin Wentian's gaze landed on the elder of the Royal Academy, as he calmly spoke. I have something to say to you. Are all the teachers of the Royal Academy as shameless as you? After saying this, Qin Wentian stepped out, heading towards the exit. This sentence was obviously directed at the humiliating words spoken by the elder earlier. Are all the students of the Emperor Star Academy as shameless as you? This humiliating sentence included the entire Emperor Star Academy. Naturally, Qin Wentian would remember it. But now, his words were like a resounding slap to the elder's face. Not long ago, Qin Wentian had said that the divine inscription painting belonged to him. However, despite the Royal Academy making things difficult for him and humiliating him, Qin Wentian remained calm and indifferent. The truth would give these people the best response. Now that the truth had been revealed, Qin Wentian's words were the most powerful. Not only was it a slap to the elder's face, it also caused those who had humiliated Qin Wentian to lose all face. This time around, they had truly lost all face. As Qin Wentian spoke, he walked out. The crowd automatically opened up a path for him, as several elders clustered around Qin Wentian, chatting with him. Among them, there were many who had encountered bottlenecks in their comprehension of divine inscriptions, and it was extremely difficult for them to break through. Now that there was a young man with extraordinary attainments in divine inscriptions, if they could become friends and exchange their experiences in the future, it would be of great help to them. Not long ago, this lonely young man now had an unknowingly elevated status. Even in the Royal Academy, it was still so. If this was any other place, and considering the talent of this young man, it would be even more admirable. Yi Zhan and Lu Yan stood together, as they personally witnessed Qin Wentian walking past them. However, Qin Wentian had a smile on his face as he chatted with the people around him. He didn't even cast a glance at them. Maybe, they no longer had the qualifications to attract Qin Wentian's attention. The arrogance they had when they first arrived was now completely shattered. Especially Lu Yan at this moment, she lowered her head and didn't say anything. Maybe, they were people from different worlds. Yi Zhan's countenance was filled with rage, so much so that his expression was contorted. In truth, Qin Wentian had never interacted with him before, nor had he ever humiliated him. His rage and contortion might have originated from the fact that his pride had been ruthlessly trampled on, yet he was unwilling to admit this inferiority complex in his heart. What did Yi Zhan count for? In the Yi clan, there were many more outstanding youths that were more outstanding than him. If he left the Yi clan, he might be nothing. But now, looking at Qin Wentian's glory, just based on his own hard work and talent, Yi Zhan was no match for him. This kind of comparison caused Yi Zhan to feel a sense of inferiority in the depths of his heart, yet he suppressed this feeling of inferiority. In fact, he had never thought that Qin Wenyan would never compare himself to him. In Qin Wentian's eyes, he, Yi Zhan, was never an important character. Other than Yi Zhan, Gretchen, who was standing behind Murin, also had a similar feeling. She had once looked down on Qin Wenyan. She was once a lofty existence. But now, in front of Qin Wenyan, she could only stand behind Murin and watch Qin Wenyan blossom with his brilliance. That self-satisfied pride of hers, in front of Qin Wenyan, wasn't even worth mentioning. His combat prowess had long been proven. As for his talent in weaponsmithing, that divine inscription painting was more than enough to shatter the pride in her heart. The people from the Sky Transport Network apologized and silently left. Shui Yuan stood there, not daring to speak. The elder from the Royal Academy stared at her, his countenance ashen as he angrily berated, "This is your fault." At this moment, it was as though he wanted to vent all the humiliation he had suffered on this student, using this as a pretext to redeem his own face in front of everyone. Shui Yuan lowered her head in shame, not daring to speak. In fact, although she was in the wrong in this matter, the elder had no qualifications to criticize her. As an elder of the Royal Academy, how could she not agree to the divine inscription painting? As for what happened after that, it was all the elder's own decision. It had nothing to do with her. Mu Rou could criticize her, but this elder had no grounds to do so. However, in this world, there was no such thing as logic. No matter how severe the elder's criticism was, as an ordinary student of the Royal Academy, she could only accept it. Wasn't this a form of sorrow? Chapter 102. Qin Wenyan walked towards the exit of the Royal Academy. Behind him, little rascal leisurely followed. At the same time, there were several silhouettes in Qin Wentian's surroundings. The person closest to him was none other than the guest elder of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, Lu Feng. Since he was from the Divine Weapon Pavilion, he naturally felt closer to him. Senior Lu Feng, what was the identity of that old man earlier? Qin Wenyan curiously asked. That old man looked extremely ordinary, but he had used a promise to take away the painting that everyone wanted. Not only that, at that time, there wasn't a single person who fought with him over it. Naturally, Qin Wenyan discovered this abnormality. I was just about to tell you about this. You should know about the Junlin banquet, right? Lu Feng asked Qin Wenyan. It's the grandest event of the year in Chu. Qin Wenyan nodded. That's right. In Chu, the Junlin banquet is an extremely important event. During the Junlin banquet, the talent of the youths could be clearly seen with a single glance. And every year, the top rankers of the Junlin banquet would all have a glorious future. The majority of them had all left Chu. Lu Feng slowly continued, that old man's name is Gong Hong. Nowadays, it's very rare for the youths to hear his name. But 30 years ago, he was a genius of the younger generation. If I didn't remember wrongly, the top ranker of the Junlin banquet was none other than Gong Hong. Qin Wentian's heart trembled slightly. The top ranker of the Junlin banquet? Not only that, it was a character from 30 years ago. Why does he look so old? Qin Wenyan asked in bewilderment. For cultivators, if one's essence, qi, spirit, and blood were strong, they would all appear extremely youthful. Gong Hong wasn't even 60 years old, so he should have the appearance of a middle-aged man. Nobody knows about this. Gong Hong is a legendary character. Back then, he obtained the top ranker of the Junlin banquet, and the 9 Mystical Palace wanted to recruit him as a disciple. After speaking till here, Lu Feng glanced to his left and right, before continuing in a low voice. However, Gong Hong was someone who loved freedom and didn't agree. After obtaining the title of champion, he directly left Chu. By right, this matter should have come to an end. For those who left Chu, it was extremely rare for news to be transmitted back. However, just a few years ago, Gong Hong returned to Chu. Not only that, despite not having any experience in forging weapons during his youth, he actually had extraordinary attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. He personally inscribed divine inscriptions a total of 3 times, and all 3 times, the divine weapons he forged were all peak-tier, 3rd-ranked divine weapons. This matter caused quite a commotion in the past, and the aura of a legendary legend was also instilled into the minds of many. Currently, not only does he have extraordinary achievements in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, his personal strength is also unfathomably deep. Lu Feng sighed as he spoke. He had a lot of respect for Qin Wenyin. Hearing this, Lu Feng gradually understood. A promise from such a character was truly extraordinary. Mu Ro's father immediately got Mu Ro to agree. In the future, if the Mu clan encountered any problems they couldn't resolve, Gung Hong's promise was equivalent to a path. Wenyin, if there's an opportunity, you should pay a visit to Gung Hong and exchange insights on the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. Lu Feng smiled. He used the word exchange, evidently placing Qin Wenyin on an extremely high pedestal. Where does Senior Gung stay? Qin Wenyin asked. The Bamboo Lodge. Lu Feng laughed. In the royal capital of Chu, there was only a single place named the Bamboo Lodge, and it was precisely the place where Gung Hong stayed. This wasn't a secret, and those who knew of Gung Hong's identity were all very clear about this. There would often be people who went to the Bamboo Lodge to pay a visit to Gung Hong, but only a very few would be able to meet him. Can you bring me there? Qin Wendian smiled, his words causing Lu Feng's countenance to stiffen. You want to go there just like that? With such an esteemed senior, I would have to pay a visit sooner or later. Why don't I familiarize myself with the place first? Qin Wendian replied with a smile. Lu Feng naturally wouldn't reject such a request. After exiting the Royal Academy, Qin Wendian bid farewell to the surrounding crowd and left together with Lu Feng. The divine inscription painting that Qin Wendian had inscribed had already caused quite a commotion in the royal capital, especially in the world of weaponsmiths. And weaponsmiths had always been the target of the various powers in the royal capital. Hence, countless pairs of eyes were paying close attention to the matters of the Royal Academy. Nobody could have predicted that the ending would be so unexpected. Qin Wenyin once again entered the sights of the various major powers. Back then, when the young man stood amidst the snowstorm, with the Emperor Star Academy and the Divine Weapon Pavilion standing behind him, the various major powers were already filled with curiosity towards Qin Wenyin. And this time around, Qin Wentian's performance had once again attracted a great deal of attention. Many of the major powers started to seriously investigate Qin Wenyin. Although Qin Wentian's background seemed simple, how did he become a genius in the field of divine inscriptions? Were there any secrets on Qin Wentian's body? In the Mu residence, in front of a desk, an old man had a scroll in front of him. There were some words written on it, and the words were, Qin Wenyin, adopted son of Qin Chuan. His family background is unknown. When he was young, he was brought to the Qin residence by a crippled butler and grew up there. At the age of 6, it was discovered that there was a problem with his meridians, causing him to be unable to cultivate. At the age of 13, he was betrothed to Autumn Snow of the Bai clan. At the age of 16, the Bai clan annulled the betrothal, and Qin Wenyin began to cultivate, releasing his heavenly hammer astral soul from the third heavenly layer. There wasn't much information written on this scroll, but it was enough to encompass Qin Wentian's entire life. It was a very simple life, so simple that there wasn't much information. Only after he entered the royal capital did the information become more plentiful. The old man lifted his brush and added a line of words at the end of the scroll. Genius in divine inscriptions, able to create his own third-level divine inscriptions. His comprehension ability, monstrous. After writing this line of words, the old man placed the brush down, only to see a butler standing outside the door. What's the matter? The old man asked in a low voice. Miss Mu Ro has returned. The butler replied in a low voice. The old man inclined his head and asked in a low voice, Was Mu Ro's birthday yesterday? The butler nodded his head. Prepare a family banquet. The old man calmly stated, The scale of the banquet can be moderate, and the Mu clan can celebrate together. But it must have the warmth of a family. The butler nodded his head and bowed as he retreated. In one of the rooms in the O residence, a silhouette stood in front of a study table, looking at the scroll in front of him, as a look of contemplation flashed in his eyes. This was a middle-aged man, and he looked cultured and refined, just like an ordinary scholar. The name on the scroll was also Qin Wenyin. Once, he didn't pay much attention to this name, even if he hoped that the owner of this name would die sooner. A youth that originated from the Sky Harmony City, although he had extraordinary talent, he still had reason to believe that with Orkan, Yanaro, and the others in the Emperor Star Academy, it would be easy for them to make this genius disappear. However, the growth of this genius was too fast, so fast that he attracted the attention of the Emperor Star Academy in such a short period of time. And now, he was even protected by the will of the Emperor Star Academy. Now, it seemed that it wouldn't be so easy to get rid of this youth. How confident are we in killing him? The middle-aged man asked in a low voice. 100%. Behind him, a silhouette calmly replied. It was as though as long as the middle-aged man nodded his head, he would be able to guarantee that Qin Wenyin would become a dead man. What's the probability of the Emperor Star Academy finding out about this? The middle-aged man asked again. Directly assassinate him, 90%. That person replied as accurate as before. In that case, reduce this probability to less than 10% before we act. Naturally, if we can borrow the hands of others to do it, that would be for the best. The middle-aged man faintly stated. 90% was simply courting death. He wouldn't do such a risky thing. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin Wenyan's growth was too fast, he wouldn't even think of doing this. The Yi clan should be even more anxious than him. Right. The person behind him replied. If we borrow the hands of others, we absolutely cannot allow the Emperor Star Academy to find out about us. There must not be even the slightest possibility. The middle-aged man seemed to have thought of something as he added. No one was willing to go against the will of the Emperor Star Academy. Even the royal clan had to give the Emperor Star Academy enough face at times. The weight of his own clan naturally wasn't enough. He believed that as long as he gave the command, the person behind him would definitely do it well. After so many years, everything he did was done to perfection. The Junlin banquet was about to arrive. He hoped that Shin O would be able to obtain a good result this time around. Chapter 103. In the outskirts of the royal capital of Chu, there was a tranquil bamboo forest. This bamboo forest was situated right next to a mountain peak in the dark forest and was exceptionally tranquil. Qin Wenyin and Lu Feng arrived at this place. They stared at the verdant bamboo forest ahead, filled with an exuberant aura of life. We've arrived, but I'm unable to accompany you in. Lu Feng bitterly smiled. No one would dare to barge into this bamboo forest without permission. Qin Wenyin nodded his head lightly. Carrying little rascal in his arms, he took a step forward as he called out, Junior Qin Wenyin pays his respects to Senior Jemyang. Come in. From within the bamboo forest, an ethereal voice drifted out. Qin Wenyin only saw that the bamboo forest ahead of him actually began to move. Amidst the swaying green bamboo, there was actually a small pathway. I'll take my leave first. Lu Feng smiled at Qin Wenyin. Many thanks. Qin Wenyin nodded his head, sending Lu Feng off with his gaze. After which, he himself followed the small pathway and entered the bamboo forest. This pathway was extremely deep. After walking for some time, Qin Wenyin finally saw a simple hut in front of him. It was quiet and peaceful, as though it was isolated from the rest of the world. What a wondrous place! Qin Wenyin sighed in his heart. After arriving at the hut, he saw Jemyang Hong sitting there, as though he was drawing something. In front of him, there were several scrolls of paintings. The inscriptions on them were extremely peculiar, as though they were all divine inscriptions. Senior Jemyang. Qin Wenyin bowed to show his respect. Little brat, you came so quickly. Come over and take a look at this painting. Jemyang Hong spoke to Qin Wenyin. Qin Wenyin nodded his head as he sat down on the stool. After which, Gung Hong retrieved a painting scroll and passed it to him, causing Qin Wenyan's countenance to stiffen. The painting scroll that Gung Hong passed to him was actually in the form of a human. Senior, this is? Qin Wenyan asked. Naturally, it's a divine inscription painting. How long do you need to comprehend it? Jemyang Hong asked to Qin Wenyin. Qin Wenin furrowed his brows when he heard the other party's words as he stared at the painting. There seemed to be the figure of a beautiful woman in the painting. The figure pointed her finger forward, and there seemed to be an endless aura gushing out. Buzz. Qin Wentian's mind trembled violently. He put down the scroll, his heart pounding. I'm afraid that this painting has already reached the level of a fourth-ranked divine inscription. It's impossible for me to comprehend it within a short period of time. Qin Wenian stared at Gung Hong as he asked, was this inscribed by Senior? I don't have that level of comprehension. Gong Hong shook his head and didn't say anything else. How did you inscribe your divine inscription paintings? Gung Hong asked Qin Wenian. In a special state of comprehension, I wanted to infuse my own energy into the divine inscription painting, and under a stroke of luck, I was able to inscribe that painting, replied Qin Wenian. Infuse your own energy into the painting? Gung Hong stared at Qin Wenian, as a strange light flickered in his calm eyes. Yes. Sometimes, I wonder if divine inscriptions are a type of innate techniques, and if there are any similarities between the two. Qin Wenian nodded his head. However, his casual words caused Gung Hong's body to tremble violently as great waves rocked his heart. For a moment he stood there in a daze. Divine inscriptions, innate techniques? Gung Hong's body started to tremble. Comprehending the painting? Innate techniques, innate techniques. Gung Hong seemed to have grasped something, as his eyes stared fixedly at the painting in front of Qin Wenin. If this is an innate technique, what kind of innate technique would it be? Gung Hong murmured in a low voice. His entire person seemed to have changed. He who had been quiet all this while, had turned into a daze as he stared at the painting. Fourth-ranked divine inscriptions were countless times more complicated compared to third-ranked divine inscriptions. Even Qin Wentian had no way to unravel them. In fact, as long as he immersed his consciousness into the divine inscription, he would feel a tyrannical aura gushing towards him, only to see Qin Wentian sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. Circulating the dreamcast art within his body, he stepped into the dreamscape, and instantly he appeared on the sandy beach once again. In front of Qin Wenin, there was still the human-shaped painting he had seen earlier. In my dreamscape, let's transform. Qin Wentian's intent fluctuated as the human-shaped divine inscription painting transformed into a humanoid figure that attacked forward. Currently, Qin Wenian had no way to deduce an innate technique from this painting. However, he could use Dreamcast to cause the divine inscription painting to undergo various transformations. After that, he could deduce which of these transformations would be more compatible with the essence of the painting. After testing out hundreds and thousands of transformations, Qin Wenian discovered that if he treated this divine inscription painting as an innate technique, it would contain an endless amount of energy, as though it would never be extinguished. A single attack would have an endless amount of energy. After exiting the dreamscape, Qin Wenian saw that Gung Hong was still in that dazed state. Abruptly, Gung Hong seemed to have awoken as he stared at Qin Wenin. Use the energy you sensed from this divine inscription to attack me. Gung Hong's state caused Qin Wenian to be taken aback. This divine inscription painting must be extremely important to him. As he thought of this, he stood up and stabbed out with his finger. The air trembled as his finger landed on Gung Hong's body. However, Qin Wenin felt as though he had struck an impenetrable wall. There was no way for him to move Gung Hong. Finger technique, stacking layers of attacks? There's no such innate technique, there's no such thing. Gung Hong's eyes flashed with a hint of struggle. Senior, this must be a finger technique. What I've comprehended is only the tip of the iceberg. Maybe it's a spear technique or a sword technique, but within it, there's definitely an endless cycle of growth and multiplication. Qin Wentian spoke. Spear technique? Sword technique? Endless amount of energy? Gung Hong sank into deep contemplation. After a long time, he abruptly stepped to the side as he stabbed out with his sword. In front of him, a howl of rage could be heard, capable of destroying everything. The hurricane formed by the sword tore through the air, transforming into a terrifying whirlwind. Swishing sounds rang out as the green bamboos in front of him were directly torn apart. Is it this kind of sword technique? Gung Hong stared at Qin Wenyin. It's highly possible. Qin Wenyin felt his heart trembling as he sensed the sword intent. Gung Hong's strength was truly terrifying. 9 swords of breath, this is the 9 swords of breath. Gung Hong was extremely agitated as he glanced at Qin Wenyin. After which, Gung Hong dashed into his hut. A moment later, Qin Wenyin saw Gung Hong taking out another 3 divine inscriptions paintings as he passed them to Qin Wenyin. Quick, help me take a look. Tell me the intent contained within them. Gung Hong himself was an extremely powerful weaponsmith. His attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions were naturally extremely high. However, at this moment, he had completely lost his composure. What kind of painting would cause Gung Hong to fall into such a state of frenzy? Okay. Qin Wenyin nodded his head as he took the second painting. This painting was still that of a silhouette waving his hand. There was nothing special about it, yet it seemed as though a terrifying energy was contained within it. Qin Wenyin once again entered the dreamscape, trying to find out the various variations of the painting. After which, he tried to converse with Gung Hong. However, Gung Hong was still unable to find a corresponding innate technique. Senior, maybe this innate technique is something you have never cultivated before. Qin Wenyin looked at Gung Hong as he spoke. Impossible, absolutely impossible. If it's really as you said, and there's an innate technique hidden within the divine inscriptions, I would definitely know about it. I've never cultivated the 9 swords of breath before. Gung Hong resolutely replied. He followed Qin Wenyan's instructions and continuously unleashed over 100 different innate techniques, destroying a large portion of the bamboo forest in front of him. Senior Gung knows too many innate techniques. Even if he hasn't cultivated them before, he's still able to imitate the intent contained within. How terrifying! Qin Wenyan's heart trembled. However, at this moment, he glanced at the painting again as he mumbled in a low voice. Maybe, this painting itself is a type of innate technique that contains many variations? What did you say? Gung Hong seemed to have grasped something when he heard Qin Wenyan's words. Senior, maybe, this innate technique itself contains variations? Qin Wenyan spoke again. Gung Hong drew in a deep breath as he took a step forward and stretched out his palms. This time around, he didn't do anything, but the feeling he gave Qin Wenyan was that he would be able to unleash all sorts of variations. Yes, Senior, I'm very close. This is the feeling I have. Qin Wenyan's eyes brightened. Formless innate technique, Gung Hong murmured. He then turned to Qin Wenyan. Let's take a look at the next painting. Qin Wenyan nodded his head. The third painting actually had an extremely beautiful posture. It didn't seem like an innate technique at all. The two of them discussed for a long time as the sky gradually darkened. Yet, there was still no conclusion. The two of them didn't sleep for the entire night. They were still discussing. Finally, Gung Hong used an extremely compatible movement. Although it didn't have any charm to it and was even extremely awkward, it still caused Qin Wenyan's eyes to brighten. There's a high possibility that this is it. This is the starting stance of a movement technique. It's named the connecting steps, and it contains many variations. Gung Hong murmured as he continued, there's only one more painting left. Qin Wenyan nodded his head as he started to comprehend the last painting. This painting had the silhouette of a man, and he was just standing there. Only his eyes were extraordinary. Gung Hong only glanced at it a few times before he sighed. I've only understood the first 3 innate techniques, but I've never cultivated them before. But for the 4th innate technique, I know what it is. It's the eyes of death. As the sound of Gung Hong's voice faded, his eyes deepened, causing Qin Wenyan's heart to tremble. However, an instant later, Gung Hong's eyes returned to normal. This is one of the innate techniques I'm most proficient in. As for the 9 swords of life, it was her favorite innate technique. As for the formless innate technique and the connecting steps, I've also heard of them before. But why did I only understand today? The 4 paintings contained 4 types of innate techniques. Gung Hong drew in a deep breath as he stared at the skies. 9 swords of life, Eyes of death, formless innate technique, connecting steps. Qin Wenyin murmured, life, death, no, wait, no, it should be life, death, interdependent. Qin Wentian's words entered Gung Hong's ears, yet they were akin to a bolt of lightning directly blasting into his mind, causing him to stiffen on the spot, as though he had stopped thinking. At this moment, Qin Wenyan felt an oppressive aura. This entire space was so quiet that it was terrifying. Interdependent, haha, interdependent. Gung Hong, you will die a horrible death. Abruptly, Gung Hong howled in rage as he coughed out a mouthful of fresh blood. His heart was overwhelmed with anger as he collapsed onto the ground. His eyes were still wide open, and in those deep eyes of his, there was boundless regret and despair. Chapter 104. Senior. Upon seeing this scene, Qin Wentian's heart trembled as he exclaimed in shock. Squatting down, he wanted to check on the condition of Gung Hong's injuries. However, he only saw Gung Hong waving his hands, his eyes still staring at the empty space. His empty eyes were filled with despair, grief, regret, pain, and all sorts of other negative emotions. Anyone who looked at him would be able to feel the deep sorrow in his heart. Senior, please take care of yourself. Qin Wenyan sighed in his heart when he saw the expression in Gung Hong's eyes. He knew that Senior Gung must have had an extraordinary past. Living and dying together, 20+ years, everything was wrong. I wholeheartedly wanted to comprehend the divine inscriptions within the 4 paintings, and because of this, I started to study divine inscriptions. But sadly, I was wrong from the start. Gung Hong's voice was filled with helplessness and sorrow, as though he was mumbling to himself. If I knew that she didn't want me to comprehend the divine inscriptions, and only wanted me to unravel the 4 innate techniques within the 4 paintings, I believed that I would at most need half a year's time to unravel them. After all, I've seen and recognized these 4 innate techniques before. In fact, I might even be able to unravel them within 2 to 3 months. Time was more than enough, but I still spent over 20 years. Gung Hong continued. Qin Wenyan knew that Gung Hong was right. If Gung Hong knew that the 4 innate techniques contained within the 4 paintings, based on his experience and comprehension, half a year would be more than enough. After all, he was familiar with the 4 innate techniques, and was even able to unleash them. However, Gung Hong's direction was completely wrong. I've always claimed to be carefree and unrestrained, but in reality, I'm inferior, cowardly, and cold-blooded. I've let you down. A teardrop rolled down from the corner of Gung Hong's eyes. He laid there like a dead man. There was nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart. His heart, at this moment, was as cold as ice. At this moment, Qin Wenyan saw Gung Hong's disheveled hair slowly turning white, causing his heart to tremble. Senior, it's already been over 20 years. Why must you do this? Qin Wenyan persuaded. What kind of despair and agony could cause one's hair to turn white in an instant? In an instant, the black hair on Gong Sun Hong's head turned silver. Gong Sun Hong seemed to have aged tens of years in an instant. With his eyes closed, Qin Wenyan sat beside him, not knowing what to say. The she he was talking about should be a woman. Otherwise, why would he leave behind the words "will stick together in life and death"? However, what Qin Wenyan didn't understand was that since the woman had such deep feelings for him, why didn't she tell Gung Hong to his face, leaving behind decades of regret and misunderstanding? Gung Hong closed his eyes, as though he had lost all signs of life. Qin Wenyan sighed, but didn't disturb him. He sat down not far away from Gung Hong and didn't leave, as he was worried that something might have happened to Gung Hong. Very swiftly, another night arrived as astral light cascaded down from the heavens, landing on Qin Wentian's body. In his dreams, he was currently cultivating. His entire person was bathed in the astral light, tranquil and peaceful. Bits of astral energy unceasingly flowed into his body, circulating through his arterial pathways and acupoints, circulating through the heavenly cycle. At this moment, Gung Hong opened his eyes. He inclined his head and stared at the starlight in the sky, as an intense sense of disappointment could be seen in his eyes. Everything is your own doing. Gung Hong stared at the empty space as he murmured in his heart. Back then, she was extremely talented and had countless pursuers. Although you appeared to be confident and at ease, didn't you feel inferior in your heart? If you didn't feel inferior, why didn't you feel that way after spending so much time with her? Could it be that you couldn't sense her feelings for you? Back then, she rejected 18 marriage proposals, and those she rejected were all demon-level geniuses from the various great sections. None of them were inferior to you, so why did she reject them? Why did she tell you all these? But you felt inferior, useless, and didn't even dare to open your mouth to express your feelings. Back then, everyone was jealous of you. Why were they jealous? Because she was only close to you, and because of jealousy, she heavily injured you. Because of this, she begged her father for medicine for you. But on the 19th marriage proposal, she maintained her silence. Could it be that you really couldn't see the reason behind it? Even when she came to see you for the last time, you still didn't open your mouth to express anything. You didn't say anything at all. She left behind 4 paintings and gave you a year's time. Even if you didn't comprehend the paintings in this 1 year, as long as you opened your mouth, she would still choose to leave with you regardless of the price. Because of these 4 words, together in life and death. But you still didn't. You personally witnessed her getting married to someone else, and even stared at her with indifference in your eyes, watching everything unfold. Could it be that you couldn't see the despair and coldness in her eyes when she looked at you? Gung Hong, you truly deserve to die. Gung Hong thought back to the events that happened over 20 years ago. In his heart, there was only pain. He stared at the night sky in a daze, lonely and desolate. The morning air was slightly damp. In the bamboo forest ahead, sparkling and translucent dewdrops could be seen. Qin Wendian opened his eyes, only to see Gung Hong sitting there. Gung Hong's silvery hair draped over his shoulders, causing him to appear exceptionally old. Qin Wendian called out, "Senior? You're awake." Gung Hong turned his gaze over as he smiled at Qin Wendian, as though he had just woken up from the madness he experienced yesterday. This caused Qin Wendian to silently heave a sigh of relief. Qin Wendian nodded his head. How did you manage to link divine imprints and innate techniques together? Gung Hong curiously asked. Back then, she was also a heaven-defying genius and was proficient in divine imprints. 20 years ago, she was able to inscribe 4 paintings for him. This was the best proof. Not only that, she was the same as Qin Wendian, and had long since discovered the connection between divine imprints and innate techniques. It was also a stroke of inspiration. I cultivated a type of innate technique before, and I needed to borrow the power of divine imprints. After that, I gained some insights into divine imprints, and unknowingly, I managed to link the 2 together. Qin Wendian smiled as he replied. Gung Hong stared at the clean smile on the young man's face, and involuntarily thought back to the time when he was young. Sadly, he had wasted over 20 years of his life, and the only thing left behind was regret. If you meet a girl that can move your heart, don't miss this opportunity. You must take the initiative to speak to her. Gung Hong abruptly spoke to Qin Wendian, causing Qin Wendian to be stunned. Wasn't this sudden change a little too great? Smiling foolishly, Qin Wendian nodded his head, okay. However, up until now, he had yet to meet a girl that could truly move his heart. If he wanted to talk about his heart being moved, it would be the scene of that day in the snow. Snowflakes drifted down from the sky, and the young girl sitting on the ground with him, calling him a Dumbo, before leaving with a smile on her face. That scene was truly beautiful. What am I thinking about? Qin Wendian bitterly smiled as he shook his head. Remember, don't miss this opportunity. If not, you will regret it for the rest of your life. Gung Hong sighed deeply as he continued, you are able to link divine imprints and innate techniques together, but have you ever tried to link your astral souls with your innate techniques? Senior, the attacks of innate techniques all contain a strand of energy from the astral souls within. Different astral souls can imbue different amounts of astral energy into the innate techniques you cultivate. As for a deeper connection, this junior has yet to unravel it. Qin Wendian replied. Although this was what he said, in reality, Qin Wenyan already had this feeling. Back then when he fought against Yanaro and Luo Qianqiu, he had already faintly sensed that he wanted to infuse dream force into his attacks. You should know that above Yuanfu is the Heavenly Dipper realm, right? But do you know what the symbol of a Heavenly Dipper realm is? Geng Hong asked Qin Wenyan. Junior doesn't know. Qin Wenyan replied. Currently, he was only at the arterial circulation realm. How could he possibly come into contact with someone at the Heavenly Dipper realm? Heavenly Dipper realm was already enough to stand at the pinnacle of Chu. When you condense your astral nova is also known as your astral soul. At that time, your astral soul would be the most direct form of combat prowess. A powerful astral nova is even more tyrannical compared to divine weapons. Geng Hong explained to Qin Wenyan, sooner or later, your astral soul will be transformed into an innate technique. However, the amount of resources required to condense an astral nova is simply too great. From the Yuanfu realm to the Heavenly Dipper realm, there's a huge gap. Many people have no way to cross this heavenly boundary in their entire lives. This includes those with outstanding talent. If you can infuse your astral soul into your combat prowess earlier, in the future when you condense your astral nova, you would have a deeper comprehension and would have an easier time compared to others. Geng Hong guided Qin Wenyan, as Qin Wenyan listened seriously. This was the insights of a senior, an extremely valuable experience. Look into my eyes. Geng Hong spoke to Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan stared into Geng Hong's eyes, only to see a pair of eyes of death staring into his eyes. It was as though an intent of death rushed into his mind. Luckily, that intent of death instantly vanished, but in that instant, it still caused Qin Wenyan's heart to palpitate wildly. Just a single gaze was already so terrifying. This is the fusion of my astral soul and my innate technique, the eyes of death. This innate technique can only be cultivated by those with a similar level of astral soul. Geng Hong continued, hence, you must always remember to use your astral soul. In the future, it will be your strongest weapon, and also the crux to raising your cultivation base. Many thanks for Senior's guidance. Qin Wenyan bowed. Just some words of experience, how can it be considered as guidance? If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid that I would still be unable to decipher these 4 paintings. Geng Hong sighed. Qin Wenyan, the direction you've comprehended is correct. Astral souls, divine imprints, innate techniques, all of these are for the sake of cultivation. As the saying goes, all rivers flow into the sea, the great Tao originates from the same source. Work hard in your cultivation, live your life well, and don't have any regrets. You go ahead. These 4 paintings were solved by you, so I'll gift them to you. Geng Hong treated Qin Wenyan as a junior. Qin Wenyan glanced at the silver-haired Geng Hong as he received the paintings in his hands. Standing up, he bowed once more before retreating. Senior, take care. In the future, this junior will come and visit Senior often. Qin Wenyan left behind these words as he stepped into the bamboo forest. Little Rascal scuttled out from the side, following behind him. Chapter 105. The Emperor Star Academy was even more lively than usual. As the end of the year neared, many of the students who were out tempering themselves returned. Under the sunlight, the laughter of the youths caused the entire academy to be filled with vitality. Within the academy, the most popular topic of discussion was naturally the strength of the students who returned, and whether they would be able to obtain outstanding results in the June Lin banquet. There were also many who would occasionally mention the name of Qin Wenyan. This name could be said to be the most frequently mentioned name in the Emperor Star Academy this year, even more so than Luo Qianqiu last year. After all, in this year, this new student had accomplished many great things. Many of the returning students were filled with admiration for Qin Wenyan. Naturally, there were also those who had been out tempering themselves for a long period of time and had heard of Qin Wenyan's story the moment they returned to the academy. Although they were extremely prideful, they couldn't help but feel a tinge of defiance in their hearts. They wanted to spar with this new student to see if he was as legendary as the rumors said. Because of this, whenever Qin Wenyan walked around the academy grounds, he would always attract the attention of many people. This was especially so after the incident with the Royal Academy. When he returned to the academy, there were even more gazes focused on him, causing Qin Wenyan to smile bitterly in his heart. He had truly experienced the treatment of a celebrity. However, the feeling of being stared at everywhere he went wasn't a good one. Returning to his own courtyard, Qin Wenyan discovered that other than Qin Yao, senior sister Luo Huan was there as well. "Senior sister, why are you here?" Qin Wenyan smiled as he walked forward. "I'm here to chat with Qin Yao. You caused such a huge commotion outside and are now a celebrity. When are you going to gift me a divine inscription painting?" Luo Huan looked at Qin Wenyan with a smile that was not a smile. "If senior sister likes it, I will personally gift it to you the next time I create a divine inscription painting." Qin Wenyan laughed. "Don't lie to me." Luo Huan's beautiful eyes flashed with a strange light. "Naturally. Not to mention one, even if senior sister wants 5 or 6 paintings, I will still give them to you." Qin Wenyan laughed, causing the smile on Luo Huan's face to grow even more radiant. "Looks like I didn't dote on you for nothing. Come over, let senior sister give you a kiss." Qin Wenyan stared at Luo Huan's smiling face as his eyes flickered. He bitterly smiled. "Senior sister, stop tempting me." Luo Huan's charm was exceedingly great. Qin Wenyan had seen many beauties before, but only Mo Qingqing and Luo Huan were able to cause his heart to flutter. However, they were two different kinds of beauty. Mo Qingqing was a peerless beauty of the mortal world. It was extremely hard for him to maintain his calmness upon seeing her. Not only that, his senior apprentice sister Luo Huan was simply too sexy. Seeing Qin Wenyan's expression, Luo Huan couldn't help but laugh. Qin Yao also added, "Sister Luo Huan, don't tease this little brat anymore. Come to think of it, this little brat is already 17 years old. I wonder if there's any girl he likes." "I'm curious as well." Luo Huan stared at Qin Wenyan. "Sister, my mind is only focused on cultivation and rescuing my father. Where would I have the time to think about such matters?" Qin Wenyan couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. "Not answering? Seems like there is. Let me guess." Luo Huan's beautiful eyes flickered as she continued, "Is it the number 1 beauty of Chu, Mo Qingqing? I heard that during Chu Tianjiao's banquet, she intentionally invited you over to chat with her." "Senior sister, don't guess like that." Qin Wenyan smiled bitterly as the scenes of him meeting Mo Qingqing flashed through his mind. "What's there to be embarrassed about?" Luo Huan continued smiling. "That dainty little lass is indeed beautiful. Her title as the number 1 beauty of Chu is definitely not just in name. At the very least, I've never seen such a beautiful lass in the royal capital. Not only that, her talent is extremely outstanding. In the royal capital, many of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital covet her." Luo Huan stared at Qin Wenyan as though her interest was piqued. She continued, "No matter how I look at it, I feel that only that lass is worthy of my junior brother. Do you want Teacher Mustang to be the matchmaker? That lass's grandfather is your grandmaster." How could Qin Wenyan resist Luo Huan's provocation? He could only smile bitterly. "If you don't say anything, it means that you've admitted it. A young genius and the number 1 beauty of Chu. Not bad, not bad." Luo Huan murmured to herself. Qin Yao, who was at the side, couldn't help but laugh when she saw the embarrassed look on Qin Wenyan's face. She was thinking in her heart, if Qin Wenyan could marry the number 1 beauty of Chu, that would naturally be the best outcome. "Okay, I won't tease you anymore. But what I said was the truth. If you want to pursue that little lass, senior sister will definitely support you." Luo Huan laughed. "Today, there's a gathering at the Emperor's Star Monument. I'm going there now. Wenyan, why don't you come with me and take a look at the outstanding students of our Emperor's Star Academy?" "What gathering?" Qin Wenyan curiously asked. "It's almost the end of the year, and many students have already returned to the Emperor's Star Academy. They like to gather together to boast, exchange their experiences, or exchange pointers, displaying their accomplishments in the past year. Although there are many who do it for the sake of vanity, there are also some who are truly sincere in their exchange and can learn something from each other. Luo Huan explained to Qin Wenyan, the strength of those who attend the gathering won't be weak. At the very least, they would be at the 7th level of arterial circulation. If not, they wouldn't be able to sit under the Emperor's Star Monument. But if you go, you definitely have the qualifications. The number 1 student of the Emperor's Star Academy, a 17-year-old Grandmaster who can create a 3rd-level divine inscription. The Emperor's Star Academy has never had such a genius before. Senior sister, don't boast about me. Qin Wenyan bitterly smiled. I'll go with senior sister. After all, I don't spend much time in the Emperor's Star Academy. I might as well take this opportunity to get to know some of the outstanding students of our academy. I'll go with you as well. Qin Yao laughed. Okay, let's go together. Luo Huan pulled Qin Yao along, and the two of them walked shoulder to shoulder. Upon seeing this scene, Qin Wenyan felt a trace of warmth in his heart. Although senior sister Luo Huan loved to joke around, and her words were always irrelevant, she had truly taken care of him and Qin Yao. Not only that, if one didn't pay close attention to it, they wouldn't be able to feel it. Which student of the Emperor's Star Academy didn't work hard in their cultivation? Who would waste so much time on outsiders? Senior sister Luo Huan didn't have much of a relationship with Qin Yao, but she would frequently visit Qin Yao and befriend her because she was afraid that Qin Yao would be lonely. Qin Wenyan silently engraved this gratitude in his heart. If he were to say it out loud, based on senior sister Luo Huan's personality, she wouldn't even be bothered with him. Within the Emperor's Star Academy, there were 9 stone monuments named the Emperor's Star Monument. There were many words engraved on them, recording the 3,000 years of history of the Emperor's Star Academy. In front of the Emperor's Star Monument, there was a circular plaza with stone platforms on it. At this moment, several youthful silhouettes could be seen seated on the stone platforms. Every year, there would be many outstanding students of the Emperor's Star Academy sitting on these stone platforms, gazing at the Emperor's Star Monument, admiring the glory of their predecessors. At the same time, they were also determined to write down the history of the Emperor's Star Academy. Below the stone steps of the plaza, there were even more silhouettes. Their gazes were fixated on the stone platforms, as traces of respect could be seen in their eyes. At this moment, those who were seated on the stone platforms were all outstanding students of the Emperor's Star Academy. The cultivation bases of the senior brothers up there should be at least at the 7th level of arterial circulation. I wonder when I'll be able to break through to the 3rd level of arterial circulation. Not only at the 7th level of arterial circulation, all of them have their own achievements. If not, they wouldn't even be able to sit on the stone platforms together with the others. That's right, our Emperor's Star Academy has so many years of history. Every year, there would be fresh blood coming in, and there are many geniuses in the academy. Just based on the 3rd level of arterial circulation, there are already many senior brothers at the same level. If they don't have any special abilities, they wouldn't even have the qualifications to compete with the others. Below, many gazed at the silhouettes standing on the stone platforms, discussing which of the students was stronger. They were filled with curiosity towards this. Senior sister Luo Huan from the Green Cloud Association is here. Senior sister Luo Huan is as mesmerizing as ever. The beautiful girl beside her is Qin Yao, and that guy is Qin Wenyan. He's here as well. The crowd parted to form a path, and on the stone platforms, there were many gazes directed towards Luo Huan and Qin Wenyan. One of them smiled as he stated, Luo Huan, I heard that you've already stepped into the 9th level of arterial circulation. Come up here quickly. Is junior brother Qin beside me? Please come up here and chat with us. Another person laughed. Luo Huan held onto Qin Wentian's hand as the two of them ascended the stairs, and sat down on 2 adjacent stone platforms. Upon seeing this scene, the eyes of many in the crowd flashed with sharpness. Luo Huan and Qin Wenyan appeared to be somewhat intimate, causing some to feel extremely unhappy in their hearts. After all, with Luo Huan's beauty and talent, there were many who pursued her in the Emperor's Star Academy. As though he could feel the hostility, Qin Wenyan could only smile bitterly in his heart. Senior sister Luo Huan had caused him so much trouble. At this moment, he could clearly feel the coldness in the gazes of those who were looking at him. However, his countenance remained calm as he surveyed the silhouettes on the stone platforms. There were over 30 people on the stone platforms, and their cultivation bases were all at least at the 3rd level of arterial circulation. This was the foundation of the Emperor's Star Academy. In the future, these people would all have the opportunity to break through to Yuanfu. Not only that, there were still many who had yet to arrive. For example, Luo Qianqiu, Orkan, and the others. Just within the Emperor's Star Academy, there were already so many people at this level. One could only imagine how magnificent the June Lin banquet would be. Chapter 106. In front of the Emperor's Star Monument, the various outstanding students sat on the stone platform, attracting the attention of many students. More and more people gathered here. At this moment, a silhouette in front of the Emperor's Star Monument smiled and said, "There's less than a month left until the end of the year. To be able to sit together with my fellow brothers and sisters, admiring the glory of our predecessors, and discussing our cultivation experiences is truly a joyous occasion. Senior Chiu is too polite. To be able to sit together and chat with Senior Chiu is already a fortunate thing." Someone politely replied. "This person's name is Chiu Mo, and he's extremely powerful. For this generation's 10 prodigies, our Emperor's Star Academy has 2. This Chiu Mo is one of them, and he's ranked 4th. Luo Huan whispered to Qin Wenyan, who was beside her. Qin Wenyan seriously glanced at Chiu Mo. This person was around 18 to 19 years of age, and had a scholarly countenance. His facial features were gentle, and he exuded an amiable aura. "Where's the other person?" Qin Wenyan curiously asked. Beside Chiu Mo, his name is Jiang Xiu, and he's ranked 10th among the 10 prodigies. However, you must not underestimate the person ranked 10th. Although the 10 prodigies are all outstanding youths below the age of 20, their cultivation bases are extremely close to each other. Other than those who have stepped into Yuanfu, the combat prowess of the others wouldn't be too far apart. Luo Huan continued, "The 10 prodigies of the royal capital are always the top 3 rankers of the June Lin banquet. Naturally, after the June Lin banquet, the rankings of the 10 prodigies will be rearranged. Luo Cheng, I haven't seen you in the Azura Alliance for the past year. I'm sure that your combat prowess must have improved tremendously. Do you have any insights that you'd like to share?" Chiu Mo was ranked 4th among the 10 prodigies, and was regarded as the host of this gathering. He took the initiative to speak to a seemingly mature youth. Although Luo Cheng wasn't that old, he seemed to be in his 20s, and was much more mature compared to his peers. Not only that, there was a hint of wildness in his eyes. The members of the Azura Alliance were all madmen. They were extremely cruel to themselves, and would often train in the dark forest for a year or even a few years at a time. Not only that, their combat prowess was also extremely outstanding. "Is there anyone willing to give it a try?" Luo Cheng calmly asked, causing the gazes of the crowd to freeze. Last year, Luo Cheng already had the strength of a cultivator at the 6th level of arterial circulation. It was said that he had already broken through to the 8th level of arterial circulation. "Why don't I try?" After that, Mountain walked to the center of the public square and stared at Luo Cheng. "I'm here to see how much your strength has improved." "Mountain, be careful," Luo Huan called out. Mountain grinned as he nodded his head to Qin Wenyan. "Senior Mountain, what's your current cultivation level?" Qin Wenyan asked Luo Huan. "Peak of the 8th level of arterial circulation," Luo Huan replied. Luo Cheng stood up from the stone platform and walked to the opposite side of the mountain. A large astral blade appeared in his hand, exuding a cold intent. Boom! Luo Cheng stepped out like a demonic beast. His body sank as he slashed out with his saber. A resplendent saber light appeared in the air, resplendent and cold. Big Mountain roared. The mountain rocks roared as he punched out with his fist. It was as tough as steel and it flew towards the saber. However, Luo Cheng's saber changed direction, slashing towards Mountain's throat with the speed of lightning. Even though the sun shone down from the sky, the spectators could still feel the chill of the saber. The edge of the saber was too cold. What a strange saber. Senior Mountain will be at a disadvantage in this battle. Qin Wendian muttered in a low voice. Indeed, after a few clashes, Mountain was starting to feel strained. His attack power wasn't any weaker than his opponent's, and his defense was higher as well. However, Luo Cheng's saber technique was extremely strange. It was a saber technique that was used to kill. It was impossible to tell what kind of innate technique it was. Chi! Another cold light flashed by. The movements of the two of them halted. Luo Cheng's saber had already disappeared, while Mountain stood there in a daze. I've lost. A few strands of hair drifted down from Mountain's head. Mountain only felt a chill in his head. Earlier, if Luo Cheng's saber was just a little bit off, he would have already lost his life. His attacks follow the rules, and his innate techniques don't contain any of his own variations. How can he not be defeated? Luo Cheng calmly spoke as he walked back to the stone platform, calmly sitting down. Many thanks. Mountain recovered very quickly. He smiled at Luo Cheng and returned to his seat, as though he didn't care about his earlier defeat. At this moment, Qin Wenyan understood the meaning of this gathering in the Emperor's Star Academy. It was a competition between geniuses, learning the strengths of others and understanding one's own weaknesses. Such a class was even more direct and impactful compared to a teacher's class. Indeed, innate techniques are all created by predecessors. Why can't he infuse his own insights into them? Luo Cheng's saber technique was obviously infused with his own insights, tempered by life and death situations, causing the killing power to be even stronger. Qin Wendian silently mused. He once again thought of the divine inscription diagram he had. That divine inscription diagram was an ideal form of attack that he wanted to achieve. However, he had no way to truly comprehend it. After which, there were a few more people sparring, and each of them had their own unique characteristics. A young student unleashed the power of his arterial circulation to the extreme. Every part of his body seemed to be able to attack, causing Qin Wendian to deeply feel that there was something worth learning from each and every one of them. The students below the stone platform listened to the discussions of their senior brothers and sisters. They were all extremely quiet as they earnestly studied. To them, this was also a rare opportunity. At this moment, on the stone platform, Chiyomo's gaze landed on Qin Wendian as he smiled. Junior brother Qin's talent is outstanding. Being able to create a third-level divine inscription at such a young age, causing your name to shake the entire Chu Empire. Do you have any insights that you would like to share with your senior brothers and sisters? Qin Wendian was a new student of the Emperor's Star Academy. Not only that, he was the only new student standing on the stone platform. Hence, the people here were naturally his senior brothers and sisters. My cultivation base is too shallow, and I don't dare to discuss my experiences in front of my senior brothers and sisters. Seriously listening and learning is what Qin Wendian should be doing. Qin Wendian humbly replied. He wasn't being polite. Although his talent was outstanding, and his cultivation speed was extraordinary, he felt that there were still many things that he needed to learn. Junior brother is too humble. Stepping into the 6th level of arterial circulation from the body refinement realm within a year is an extremely rare feat. What's even more admirable is that you have such a high level of comprehension towards divine inscriptions. As we all know, a weaponsmith would need to spend a large amount of time and effort in researching divine inscriptions. Since junior brother is able to cultivate both, how can you not have any good points? Chiyomo continued with a smile on his face, exuding an air of elegance. If I really want to find out the reason, it might be because my first astral soul was a forging-type astral soul, which gave me an advantage in terms of comprehension towards divine inscriptions. In addition to that, my luck was slightly better. Qin Wendian calmly replied. So that's the case. However, I still have to advise junior brother. Cultivation isn't easy, and this world is ultimately a world of martial arts. Strength is the only thing that will never change. Although divine inscriptions are also important, there's no need to waste too much time on cultivation. If not, If you sink too deeply into it, you won't be able to wholeheartedly focus on the path of cultivation. Chiao Mo slowly continued, after all, on Wu Xiu's path, countless geniuses have fallen. Even for those who had outstanding talent when they were young, they would often encounter bottlenecks when they were about to break through to the next level, and would never be able to break through in their entire lives. There were also those who had cultivated extremely quickly, but because their hearts weren't resolute enough, they gradually became mediocre. There are many such examples. Chiao Mo's tone sounded as though he was lecturing his junior brother, yet the spectators could faintly feel that something was wrong. Qin Wenyan had displayed outstanding talent, and Chiao Mo should be congratulating him instead. Even if he wanted to remind Qin Wenyan, it was fine if he didn't go overboard. Why did he have to say so much? Not only that, it was as though he was implying that Qin Wenyan would become a fallen genius. In this case, intentionally or unintentionally, Chiao Mo had already targeted Qin Wenyan. However, it wasn't very obvious. Qin Wenyan wasn't a mediocre person. He naturally could feel that Chiao Mo had spoken too much to him. However, he didn't understand why Chiao Mo would target him. After all, he wasn't that familiar with Chiao Mo, and there shouldn't be any grudges between them. However, there was no need for him to lose his temper in front of so many people. He casually smiled as he replied, "Senior brother is right. It would naturally be for the best if you could listen to my advice." Chiao Mo nodded his head to Qin Wenyan as he continued, creating a third-ranked divine inscription at the age of 17, there has never been such a case in the history of Chu. I'm sure you must have had some fortuitous encounters, and have already created several types of third-ranked divine inscriptions, which others don't have. But on the path of cultivation, fortuitous encounters and luck are secondary. You still have to depend on yourself. If one were to say that Chiao Mo's earlier words were a little unclear, then the latter part of his words were extremely obvious. That seemingly courteous words, if one were to put it lightly, were to say that he was doubting Qin Wenyan. He first said that there had never been a 17-year-old in the history of Chu who created a third-ranked divine inscription, and after that, he said that Qin Wenyan must have had some fortuitous encounters, and that he had many third-ranked divine inscriptions that others didn't have. This was undoubtedly hinting that the divine inscription Qin Wenyan created wasn't something Qin Wenyan created himself, but something he already had. If one were to take this sentence seriously, it wouldn't just be doubting Qin Wenyan. It could even be said that he was extremely vicious. A third-ranked divine inscription that had never appeared in the history of Chu, in addition to the fact that he was able to inscribe it at such a young age, how great was his fortuitous encounter? Exactly how many types of divine inscriptions did Qin Wenyan have? It was still fine if he was in the academy, but if he was outside the academy, how many people would covet his treasures and act against him? Qin Wenyan furrowed his brows. Luo Huan, who was beside him, also had an expression of extreme displeasure on her face. The hidden meaning behind Chiao Mo's words was too vicious. Chapter 107. Qin Wenyan sat cross-legged on the stone platform as the gazes of the crowd landed on him. Chiao Mo's words seemed to have reminded them that the legendary painting scroll, was it really created by Qin Wenyan himself? Being able to inscribe a third-ranked divine inscription at the age of 17, he must have had some sort of miraculous encounter. Qin Wenyan, there's a secret. A thought appeared in the hearts of many as they seriously scrutinized Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan could clearly feel the gazes of the crowd. At this moment, his heart was filled with rage. He was extremely angry, and he naturally had a reason to be angry. Today was the first time he met Chiao Mo. If Chiao Mo had doubted his cultivation, it was one thing. But to actually target him so viciously, what kind of thoughts were hidden beneath that gentle smile on his face? Staring at the calm eyes of Chiao Mo, Qin Wenyan suppressed the emotions in his heart as he replied, "Senior's words, Qin Wenyan doesn't dare to agree." Chiao Mo had a strange expression on his face as he laughed. He stared at Qin Wenyan. Could it be that junior brother Qin only wants to rely on miraculous encounters and not your own hard work to raise your strength? Miraculous encounters are luck, and luck is something that comes naturally. I naturally wouldn't intentionally think about such illusory things. However, isn't luck also a type of strength? Qin Wenyan stared at Chiuemo as he continued. Right now, if there's a 4th-ranked divine weapon or a heaven-ranked innate technique placed in front of senior brother, do you want it or not? Naturally. Chiuemo replied. Senior brother, why don't you think of relying on yourself? Why don't you rely on miraculous encounters and directly give up on them? Qin Wenyan stared at Chiuemo as he continued asking. Chiuemo stared at Qin Wenyan as a look of disdain flashed in his eyes. This is sophistry, ridiculous. Sophistry? Qin Wenyan calmly replied, the path of cultivation is extremely treacherous. For experts who stand at the peak, which of them wouldn't experience countless life and death situations? Without some luck, how would they be able to turn calamity into safety? How would they be able to obtain better cultivation arts and stronger innate techniques? For any character that can transcend the heavens, other than their own talent and hard work, they would definitely have good luck as well. Senior, do you agree? I agree. That's why I said that fortuitous encounters are secondary. What's more important is yourself. Junior brother Qin, why are you in such a hurry to explain? Chiuemo laughed. The 3rd prince of Chu Tianjiao, had a fortuitous encounter the moment he was born. Because he was born in the royal clan of Chu, such a fortuitous encounter allowed him to have sufficient cultivation resources to support his cultivation. Hence, the people of Chu referred to him as the heavens chosen of his generation, and were filled with reverence and respect. Senior, do you dare to stand in front of Chu Tianjiao and say, because you were born in the royal clan, you have to remember that in order to cultivate, you have to depend on yourself? Qin Wenyan wasn't happy or angry as he calmly spoke. The atmosphere on the stone platform suddenly turned strange. Chiuemo was intentionally targeting Qin Wenyan, the crowd could naturally tell. After all, he was a senior brother, and was ranked number 4 among the 10 prodigies of Chu. Even if he was intentionally targeting Qin Wenyan, there wasn't much fault to be found in his words. However, at this moment, Qin Wenyan actually used Chu Tianjiao to refute Chiuemo. Ridiculous, what qualifications do you have to be mentioned in the same breath as the 3rd prince? A cold voice drifted over. Qin Wenyan shifted his gaze onto the person who spoke. It was none other than Jiang Xiu, who stood beside Chiuemo. Jiang Xiu was also one of the 10 prodigies of Chu, but he was ranked at the bottom of the 10 prodigies. For those ranked above him, he naturally had a sense of respect, not to mention Chu Tianjiao, who was ranked number 2. Qin Wenyan had used Chu Tianjiao as an example, as though he was placing Chu Tianjiao in the same breath as himself. Naturally, he was unhappy. Today, Qin Wenyan came here to listen to the exchange of views between his senior brothers, yet he didn't expect that there would be someone intentionally targeting him. He was originally a hot-blooded youth, but after being repeatedly provoked, the blood in his chest started to boil. Involuntarily, he coldly snorted, "Why can't I be mentioned in the same breath?" The 3rd prince, Chu Tianjiao, has already stepped into Yuanfu over a year ago. And what's your current cultivation level? Jiang Xiu stared at Qin Wenyan, as a cold intent flickered in his eyes. I've only been in the Emperor Star Academy for a year, and I've already stepped into the 6th level of arterial circulation from the body refinement realm. I even defeated a senior student, Yanaro. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that my combat prowess is comparable to a cultivator at the 7th level of arterial circulation. I can inscribe 3rd level divine inscriptions. How many youths in Chu below the age of 20 can do that? Why can't I be compared to Chu Tianjiao? Now that I'm inferior to him, could it be that I'm destined to be inferior to him forever? The arrogance in Qin Wenyan's heart was ignited. Staring at Jiang Xiu, he retorted, "According to your logic, those who are weak wouldn't dare to compare themselves to those stronger than them. Could it be that they only dare to compare themselves to those weaker than them? How ridiculous! You don't even have the confidence to chase after the strong, not to mention surpassing your predecessors. Seems like there's a reason why you're ranked at the bottom of the 10 prodigies. Impudent. Jiang Xiu was provoked by Qin Wentian's words, and he couldn't help but berate him, as a cold light flickered in his eyes. Qin Wentian's words were impolite, and he didn't have the self-restraint of Qiu Mo. He, Jiang Xiu, was one of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. Whenever he walked in the academy, he would always be looked up to by others. But at this moment, in front of so many students, he was actually insulted by a freshman. Naturally, he would feel embarrassed, and his face would lose all face. What impudent! As a cultivator, shouldn't we have the confidence and will to become stronger? Everyone here is an outstanding student of the Emperor's Star Academy. Who would be willing to be inferior to others? Today, senior brother Qiu Mo used such words to teach me. The reason is very simple. It's because he is stronger than me. Qin Wentian slowly spoke, causing the hearts of the spectators to agree. Qin Wentian's words had hit the nail on the head. The reason why Qiu Mo said such words to Qin Wentian was because Qiu Mo was stronger than him. Qiu Mo was ranked number 4 among the 10 prodigies, while Qin Wentian was only at the 6th level of arterial circulation. Just like what Qin Wentian had said, if it was Chu Tianjiao, Qiu Mo wouldn't have said such words. Because Chu Tianjiao was stronger than Qiu Mo. Of course, if Qiu Mo only wanted to teach, Qin Wentian wouldn't be so angry. But Qiu Mo had ulterior motives, and was intentionally targeting Qin Wentian. The atmosphere grew increasingly strange. Qiu Mo's countenance flickered. He didn't expect Qin Wentian's words to be so sharp. Finally, it was still Qiu Mo who broke the silence. Qiu Mo had a smile on his face, as an indistinct aura gushed forth from him. His body slowly floated up from the stone platform, as a powerful surge of yuan energy permeated the air. Gradually, the cross-legged Qiu Mo floated up into the air, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Yuanfu realm. Senior brother Qiu Mo has stepped into Yuanfu. How powerful! The rankings of the 10 prodigies were updated at the end of last year. Senior brother Qiu Mo was ranked 4th, while Immortal Drunken Wine was ranked 3rd. If Immortal Drunken Wine hadn't broken through to Yuanfu, senior brother Qiu Mo would have replaced his position. For a moment, the crowd was in an uproar. Evidently, many people were shocked. Advancing from the arterial circulation realm to Yuanfu was an extremely difficult feat. Many geniuses had to spend a long period of time before they could break through. There were also many geniuses who displayed outstanding talent at the arterial circulation realm, only to become mediocre after they broke through to Yuanfu. The difference between each realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. From a certain perspective, Qiu Mo's lesson to Qin Wentian wasn't wrong. Indeed, many geniuses had fallen. Now that Qiu Mo had broken through to Yuanfu, he undoubtedly had the qualifications to guide Qin Wentian. Because he had already proven himself. He, who was ranked 4th among the 10 prodigies, would only grow stronger after he broke through to Yuanfu. Slowly, he would pull apart the distance between him and those who had yet to break through. Even if Immortal Drunken Wine couldn't break through, the distance between them would still be pulled apart. Naturally, stepping into Yuanfu also meant that Qiu Mo would no longer be able to participate in the June Lin banquet. However, compared to breaking through to Yuanfu, the June Lin banquet wasn't as important. After all, the purpose of the June Lin banquet was to spar against the geniuses. Only the top few would be able to obtain generous rewards. And as for Qiu Mo, if he didn't break through to Yuanfu, even if his cultivation base had already reached the peak of arterial circulation, he wouldn't dare to say that he would be able to obtain one of the top 3 positions in the June Lin banquet. You're right, I have the qualifications to guide you. There's no other reason than because I'm stronger than you. Qiu Mo floated in the air, staring at Qin Wentian. At this moment his arrogance was unmasked. Junior brother Qin, isn't it a little too impetuous to be angered because of a single sentence? Not only that, what I've said isn't wrong. How many geniuses have fallen in the past? Even in the Emperor's Star Academy, there are many who are unable to graduate. Why is that? Because you're unable to break through to Yuanfu. Now that you've encountered a fortuitous encounter, you're able to break through to Yuanfu. However, if you were to delay your breakthrough by 5 to 6 years, you would already be left far behind by others. How would you be able to compete with the other geniuses? Chiao Mo's tone was as though he was lecturing Qin Wenyin. After breaking through to Yuanfu, he had already placed himself in a higher position, as though he was lecturing a junior who didn't listen to his advice. If senior brother sincerely guided me, Qin Wenyin would naturally listen to your advice. However, from your tone, it's as though you've already determined that I'm merely relying on fortuitous encounters to achieve my current accomplishments. Sooner or later, I'll fall. This sounds more like a curse. Qin Wenyin stared at Chiao Mo as he continued, my cultivation time is still short, and I don't dare to say that I've achieved much. But at the very least, I've taken one step at a time, steadfast in my heart. Although I've encountered some fortuitous encounters, my will to cultivate has never wavered. What senior brother said is correct. Since you've broken through to Yuanfu, you naturally have the qualifications to guide me. However, you're only at Yuanfu. Senior brother, you seem to be placing yourself too high. Those who don't know might think that only senior brother Chiao Mo has broken through to Yuanfu. Qin Wentian's calm voice contained a hint of provocation within. He stared at Chiao Mo as he continued, compared to me, you merely started cultivating a few years earlier. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, the surrounding crowd fell into silence. It was as though only his voice could be heard. At this moment, Qin Wentian's words were getting sharper and sharper, as though he was in direct opposition to Chiao Mo. Chapter 108. Chiao Mo, a Yuanfu cultivator, ranked 4th among the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. Qin Wentian, a rising star of the Emperor's Star Academy. Within a short span of a year, his name shook the entire Chu country. He was a genius that could inscribe 3rd-level divine inscriptions. Chiao Mo was a senior disciple, and he indeed had the qualifications to guide Qin Wenyin. However, his words were clearly directed at Qin Wenyin. Qin Wenyin naturally had to retort. There were many Yuanfu cultivators in the Emperor's Star Academy, and this Chiao Mo was humble at the start. But after that, it was as though he was the only Yuanfu cultivator in the entire academy. What junior brother Qin said is correct. Senior Chiao Mo only started cultivating a few years earlier than you, yet he dares to lecture junior brother Qin in such a manner? It's as though you are the only one who could break through to Yuanfu. If I didn't remember wrongly, let alone when you first entered the Emperor's Star Academy, even if it was last year, your achievements were far from being comparable to junior brother Qin's. Luo Huan's voice rang out as she smiled. If senior Chiao didn't start cultivating a few years earlier, he wouldn't even have the qualifications to criticize junior brother Qin. There's no point in arguing. Since both sides are unhappy, why don't we exchange pointers? Jiang Xiao coldly continued, today is an exchange of pointers. Words won't be as persuasive as practice. You really know how to talk big. Chiao Mo started cultivating a few years earlier than junior brother Qin, and you want them to exchange pointers? Why don't you go and spar with the other Yuanfu cultivators instead? Mountain coldly snorted as he spoke with a hint of anger in his voice. Exchanging pointers doesn't necessarily have to rely on one's own strength. If senior Chiao sparred with junior brother Qin, he naturally wouldn't be able to suppress his cultivation base. At this moment, a person at the side spoke. Seeing that Chiao Mo had already returned to his seat, he couldn't help but laugh. In our Emperor's Star Academy, there's a precedent of not using Yuan energy as a foundation, but only using innate techniques. This is a test of one's comprehension and adaptability, isn't it perfect? Although that's the case, Chiao Mo's cultivation base is at the Yuanfu realm. His mind is extremely clear, and his perception is even more acute. In addition to the fact that his cultivation base is higher than Qin Wentian's, it's only natural that his comprehension of innate techniques would be deeper. The two of them are at different cultivation bases, and their physiques are on different levels. Chiao Mo naturally has the advantage. Luo Huan stared at that person as she continued, even so, Chiao Mo still has the advantage. I haven't broken through to Yuanfu yet. Why don't I represent senior Chiao Mo to spar with him? Jiang Xiu suddenly said, Qin Wenin is so arrogant, and Rowan, you have so much confidence in him. Let me test him, and let everyone see where his capital lies. If he continues to refuse with all sorts of excuses, I will not say anything more. A cold smile appeared in Jiang Xiu's eyes as he directly provoked Chu Feng. Luo Huan frowned and looked at Qin Wenyin. After all, Qin Wenyin had only been in the Emperor's Star Academy for a year. Not only that, he had also cultivated divine inscriptions. His proficiency in innate techniques was much lower than Qin Wentian's. Since they weren't competing in terms of Yuan Qi, and were only competing in terms of innate techniques, the more proficient one was in, the greater the advantage he would have. Qiu Mo didn't continue speaking. Since Jiang Xiu had spoken on his behalf, he was naturally willing to remain silent. The gazes of the crowd landed on Qin Wenyin. His countenance was as calm as ever, and no one could tell what he was thinking. At this moment, Qin Wenyin was contemplating. He had never offended Qiu Mo or Jiang Xiu before, but why did the two of them seem to have a grudge against him? Today, it seemed as though they wanted to humiliate him, as though they wanted to prove to everyone that he, Qin Wenyin, was merely relying on fortuitous encounters to achieve some accomplishments. In reality, his talent was nothing but trash, and he was destined to fall in the future. Since he couldn't figure it out, Qin Wenyin didn't think too much about it. The crowd only saw him slowly standing up from the stone platform as he walked towards the center of the circular plaza, facing Jiang Xiu as he calmly stated, "Senior brother, please guide me." Qin Wenyin stood in the center of the plaza, staring straight at Jiang Xiu. Actions were far more persuasive than words. Jiang Xiu stared at Qin Wenyin as he stood up as well. His silhouette flickered as he soared through the air, directly landing in front of Qin Wenyin. "You're welcome." Jiang Xiu's eyes gleamed with sharpness, akin to an unsheathed sword. His words were indeed extremely impolite. Junior brother's cultivation is still shallow, and my understanding of innate techniques isn't very profound. I only have a superficial understanding of them. I hope senior brother will show mercy. Qin Wenyin was as humble as ever, causing the crowd to be puzzled. This wasn't the same him as before. Hee, I use my sword as my weapon. You can choose your weapon. Jiang Xiu unsheathed a sword from his back. Although it was a divine weapon, if one didn't infuse their Yuan Qi into it, it would be no different from an ordinary weapon. Since the two of them had agreed not to spar using Yuan Qi, it was naturally best to use weapons to determine a victor. If not, if one didn't use their astral energy, they wouldn't be able to unleash palm imprints. How could they even talk about innate techniques? I use my halberd as my weapon. Qin Wenyin retrieved his ancient halberd from his interspatial ring. His hands gripped the hilt of the halberd, the tip of the halberd pointed to the ground, as the two crescent-shaped blades gleamed with a cold light. Please. Qin Wenyin held the ancient halberd tightly in his hands as he stared at Jiang Xiu, his countenance as calm as ever. Jiang Xiu's palms trembled slightly as his sword shimmered with a cold light. He slowly stepped out, walking towards Qin Wenyin. Although he didn't use any Yuan Qi, both of them were at the perfection circle of the body refinement realm, and the strength of their fleshly bodies were naturally tyrannical. Sword shadows flickered as a beam of sword light pierced towards Qin Wenyin, exuding a cold intent. Shadow Snow Sword Art. The people on the platform were all extraordinary individuals. They instantly recognized that this was a low-tier, Earth-grade innate technique from the 4th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion, the Shadow Snow Sword Art. The sword was as cold as snow, the sword light penetrating the shadows. This straight sword strike was akin to a bolt of lightning, aiming straight for Qin Wentian's throat. Qin Wenyin retreated 2 steps, as his ancient halberd abruptly pierced out, aiming for the tip of Jiang Xiu's sword, intending to clash head-on with his opponent. How exquisite is the Shadow Snow Sword Art? How can it be captured? The spectators mused silently. After which, the sword technique abruptly changed, resembling snowflakes drifting down gracefully, transforming into an arc as it shot towards the center of Qin Wentian's brows. Jiang Xiu's body also moved along with the sword, exuding an aura of elegance. Even if he doesn't use Yuan Qi to battle, it can still be so exquisite. This way, the spectators can clearly see senior brother Jiang Xiu's swordplay. The spectators below couldn't help but exclaim in admiration when they saw this scene. What an exquisite swordplay! If Jiang Xiu were to borrow the power of his Yuan Qi, how powerful would that sword strike be? Qin Wenyan continued to retreat, yet the ancient halberd in his hand danced about, transforming into a vortex as the silhouette of a Xuanwu divine turtle appeared. Jiang Xiu's swordplay had no way to break through the defense of the Xuanwu divine turtle. That's the mid-tier Earth-grade berserk beast halberd art. It's extremely tyrannical and has extremely high requirements for the cultivator. To think that Qin Wenyan would actually choose to cultivate a halberd technique. Senior brother Jiang Xiu changed his stance. It's the starpoint swordplay. The spectators only saw Jiang Xiu's swordplay changing. The sword light was akin to starlight, unceasingly piercing out, breaking through the defense of the ancient halberd. It was as though as long as the halberd was given the slightest opening, it would be able to strike Qin Wenyan. Berserk Beast Halberd Art, Vermilion Bird Stance. Qin Wenyan's halberd technique was also changing, executing the Vermilion Bird Stance. His halberd technique became extremely nimble and sharp, as though he wanted to use technique to break technique. Clanging sounds rang out unceasingly, and in that short instant, it was unknown how many times the two of them had clashed. Such close combat, it's extremely dangerous. A single mistake and victory would be forfeit. The spectators only saw that the speed of the battle between the two was increasing. Even without the use of Yuan energy, the sword shadows were still as domineering as ever. Qin Wenyan's halberd technique wasn't inferior to Qin Wenyan's. Although it wasn't as magnificent as Qin Wenyan's, his defense was as steady as a boulder, and his attacks were like dragons and tigers, extremely tyrannical. Not only that, despite the numerous clashes between the two of them, Qin Wenyan's arms were still as steady as ever. Each and every one of his attacks were deadly. Without the use of Yuan energy, it would only depend on whose comprehension of the innate techniques was deeper, and who would be able to break the stalemate. From the current situation, Jiang Xiu's swordplay was constantly changing, pressing down on Qin Wenyan with every step. Most of the time, Qin Wenyan was in a defensive stance, and if this continued, Qin Wenyan would definitely lose. However, Qin Wenyan didn't seem to have such an awareness. Although he was in a defensive stance most of the time, he was as steady as Mount Tai, not revealing any openings. Under the constant attacks of his opponent, Qin Wenyan didn't make a single mistake. Seems like Qin Wenyan's reputation isn't undeserved. Although he seems to be in a disadvantageous position, he's actually extremely stable. Although his control over the types of innate techniques is far inferior to his opponents, he's always able to turn danger into safety at the most crucial moment. The spectators on the platform saw more. There were two reasons why Qin Wenyan could be so stable in such a fast-paced battle. Firstly, he was extremely proficient in using the innate techniques that he was familiar with, and would never make a mistake due to panic. Secondly, his awareness was extremely sharp, and he was able to capture all of his opponent's attacks under immense pressure without making any mistakes. Sword Heart's lonely shadow. The spectators only heard a shout. Jiang Xiu's sword technique changed yet again, as his entire person exuded an indomitable aura. His sword was like a lonely shadow, breaking apart everything. Every beam of sword light was as cold as ice. Qin Wenyan retreated unceasingly, causing the spectators to sigh silently. In the end, Qin Wenyan was still going to be defeated. Who would have thought that Jiang Xiu would be able to cultivate the sword Heart's lonely shadow to such a level? This sword technique moved according to his will, and regardless of speed or exquisiteness, it had already reached the pinnacle of Jiang Xiu's techniques. Qin Wenyan's defense grew more and more chaotic. Defeat. In that instant, Jiang Xiu's entire person was akin to a sharp sword, piercing out with a graceful grace. Azure Dragon Stance. Qin Wenyan roared in rage as he similarly pierced out with his ancient halberd. The simplest stance, the most tyrannical attack. Release. Jiang Xiu's gaze was as sharp as a sword. The sword in his hand moved according to his will. After a total of 9 transformations, The ancient halberd in Qin Wentian's hands slipped away. But at the same time, Jiang Xiu's sword also deviated slightly. Qin Wentian is defeated. Upon seeing this scene, the hearts of the spectators silently mused. Jiang Xiu's sword could end the battle in an instant. Jiang Xiu's swordplay was superior in its ingenuity. Although the berserk beast halberd art was tyrannical, there was no energy infused within it, hence it was unable to unleash its full might. However, at this instant, the spectators saw Qin Wentian advancing instead of retreating. His palms slapped out forcefully, directly imprinting an imprint on the back of the sword. Courting death. Jiang Xiu coldly snorted. The sword in his hand arced through the air in a perfect arc, slashing horizontally towards Qin Wentian. However, he saw that Qin Wentian's footwork was incomparably exquisite, moving at the same frequency as his sword. At the same time, Qin Wentian stretched his hands out, grabbing hold of the ancient halberd that had slipped out of his hands. At this moment, the distance between Jiang Xiu and Qin Wentian was only a foot apart. Jiang Xiu's left hand slapped out, while Qin Wentian similarly slapped out with his palm. The two colliding bodies instantly pulled apart a certain distance. At the same instant, the vermilion bird stance of the berserk beast halberd art swept out, incomparably sharp. In an instant, the crescent-shaped tip of the ancient halberd landed on Jiang Xiu's neck, while his sword was still a distance away from Qin Wentian. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.